What is this? Yes, that's what I thought. Okay, so... Okay. Alright, so like, I guess I'm just gonna hang out until people start showing up. Just gonna chill for a moment while we get our bearings. I don't know what to... Oh, shoot. This needs to be in front of everything. There we go. Cool. Oh, that's not gonna work, huh? Chat box. Let's move it over here. That's much better. Make it a little smaller, too. That's better. That's much better. Okay, because in the left corner, it's gonna cover the text. Haha. Don't want that. I want people to be able to read along. So that if I make off-topic comments, they know that I'm not reading. They can see. Ooh. I might make a different graphic to put in the corner. I don't know if I have anything right now that I could do. I don't think I have anything transparent. Guess I could make something transparent, but like that's a lot of work, you know? My current Discord icon made transparent would be neat, I guess. If I finished working on that, I could make it transparent, but... I don't particularly have anything that'd be good for that right now. But I'll work on it. I'll work on making the stream look nicer and more professional. Hello! Shoot. I reorganized the apps on my phone and I am lost trying to find Twitch. Okay. Stream manager. There we go. Cool. Can I check who is in here specifically? Users in chat. Yeah, no, can't. What the heck? Hi. Alright. It's decent setup where I got the chat box. I don't think it even needs to be that big though. Like, I don't think the chat's gonna move that fast, so I'll move that up. Oh, actually, wait, no, maybe I could do it. Properties, let me edit. Maybe I can change it so the text goes from, like, the top down when it loads in. Is that a thing I can do? Chatter. Nope, that's not it. No, I don't think I can edit that, so, okay, done. I guess that's good. Good enough. Wait, I'm gonna scooch it up. Because I don't think there's gonna be many messages showing up at once. Okay. I don't know if I should, maybe put on some background music. Let me think about it. Pretty sure I mentioned in, like, all my promotion for doing this that I was going to be talking with a friend. They are busy, so I'm just going ahead and streaming without her. And she can listen to this later. And then hopefully next time we continue reading, she will be able to be here, so... let's see. I don't know how long I'm going to read for either. I'm basically just going to read until I get bored. How long is this video? That's not long enough. This video is an hour long, so that might be decent. Appropriate background music. I don't know how to pronounce that instrument name properly at all. Guqin? Is that how you say it? The instrument that Lan Wangji uses? Guqin? I don't know. Anyways. Oh. This one has a bamboo flute with it. That might be even better. Do I know this one? Wait, what is this? Is this something I know? I don't know. Anyways, how's the sound balance on that? Since I don't have a call with someone, I can actually turn down desktop audio so that it's properly background music. Yeah. Q's are pronounced like ch, kinda. So, like, I think it's like guqin or something. I don't know. I don't understand Chinese pronunciation at all. It confuses me. Anyways, if you want me to turn the background music down or up, just let me know. It's in chat. Okay, there it's loading properly. Anyways, if any of my Chinese friends watch this later, they're like this whole stream, they'll probably make fun of me for my butchering of pronunciation. But like, I'm mostly trying. Sometimes I fully lean into saying it with an American accent because like, I feel less guilty that way. Like, I don't know, if I just play it off like, haha, I'm a stupid American, like, I don't... It's not as embarrassing as if I actually try and fail. So... I've just got issues with trying to speak foreign languages and then people who actually speak that language, like, making me feel bad for it. So... Yeah. I'm sorry that I have an American accent and can't speak your language perfectly. Alright. I wonder if maybe I should set a time to let people file in and, before I start reading. I'm gonna open my, I'm gonna open Instagram, see what's going on. Whack. There ain't nothing happening on Instagram. Can I get a link to my Twitch from here? Go away. Copy the link. Alright. Yeah, I know. Okay. Yeah, it's... like... I spent most of my life being brainwashed in America to think China's bad. So, like... I am just now trying to fix that. So... you know... I don't understand how the Chinese language works because I've never ever paid attention really to like Chinese culture at all in my life. Um, okay, I am just randomly boosting my stream because, you know, I just think it'd be nice. Just like completely unrelated chat. This one's related. Okay. This video said that there was bamboo flute too, but I have heard no flute music. Where's it at? Where's the flute? Like, hello? Okay. Bitch, I'm a mother. No drama. I get random TikTok audio stuck in my head a lot. Okay. Yep. Boop. Yeah, it got very quiet, actually. That might be a lot. I don't know. Is that decent? Maybe not. That might be very quiet still. That should be good. Oh my god. I can't wait. Like, that's gonna take forever to get there, but I can't wait to get there. Especially because... So, she's not actually my sister, but I consider her my sister. Anyways, who's supposed to be here. And I'm doing this for her. To read this to her. So, I can't wait to get to those chapters because if you were to go to the clips on my channel here, all the clips, pretty much every clip is of me crying. And a lot of them come from one stream where the incense burner chapters came up and I was defending it and my friends were bullying me and you can hear her laughing the entire time in the background. She's laughing at me crying. Like, there's one clip too where I, like, my friend that was bullying me is like, it upsets me because I love swords, and I'm like, I love swords too, or something like that. It's like, and then there was just a silence, and then suddenly, you hear my sister just burst out laughing. That stream was chaotic. It wasn't even Mado Zu Shi related. I wasn't drawing Mado Zu Shi, except for that I opened up a new canvas and I drew I drew a little drawing of Wei Wuxian and just saying I hate this fucking family. And my sister kind of defended me sometimes. She's like, because, like, it's a dream. Weird things happen in dreams. It's not that weird. And the friend who was bullying me is asexual, so she's just like, is this just what all allosexuals... Is this normal for you guys? And I'm like, kinda. Like, those kinds of dreams are usually a bit weird. Like... But, yeah. I was defending the sword chapter and crying about it because I was getting bullied for it. But yeah. Anyways, you can look at those later. It'll be fun. Fun for the whole family. Okay, where's Twitch? There's Twitch. Okay, that's... The chat is not not up to date. Hello? Alright, hang on. I'm gonna reopen the app, because... Yeah. It was an entire hour-long discussion. We spent an hour talking about that, me trying to defend it, and crying. It's a mess. Okay, hopefully my phone works. So. Yeah. God, I hope my phone works. I'll open OBS every now and then to check, I guess. But okay. Let's see. I'm like nervous to start. I don't know why I'm so nervous. Okay. Great news! Wei Wuxian has died. Less than a day has passed since the siege of Luanzhang Hill, and the news spreads through the cultivation world as if it sprouted wings, surpassing even the speed of warfare. For a while, from the most prominent clans to rogue cultivators, everyone is discussing the siege that was led by the 4 great clans and followed by hundreds of smaller ones. The Yiling Patriarch has died? Who could have killed him? Who other than his Shidi, Zhang Chang, putting an end to his own relative for the greater good. Zhang Chang led the 4 clans of Yunmengzheng, Lanlingjin, Gusulan, and Qingheni to destroy his den, Luanzhang Hill. Why did it translate that? I think they change how they translate that later. I must say, good riddance. Good riddance indeed. We finally eliminated this scourge. If not for Yunmengzheng clan's adopting and teaching him, he would have been a hobo living on the streets, let alone causing mayhem as bold as the ones these days. The head of the Zhang clan raised him as her own. What? Is that supposed to say his? Anyways. Yet he defected them and became an enemy of the cultivation world, bringing shame upon the Zhang clan, even leading to its near extermination. He's the prime example of biting the hand that feeds him. Zhang Chang allowed him this fellow to live for too long. If I were him, at the time of defection, I would have just stabbed him. In fact, I would have thoroughly examined the disciples of the clan again, so that he doesn't do those crazy things he did later on. Who cares about the so-called considerations that he gave to his childhood friend? That's merely hearsay. Although Zhang Cheng was one of the main forces, he did not give Wei Wuxian the final blow because he cultivates the demon path. Wei Wuxian's powers had backfired and he was ripped to pieces. That's karma. The ghost soldiers that he created are like unleashed dogs, biting everyone that they come across. It serves him right to be chewed to death. But if not for Zhang Cheng making a plan that aimed at Wei Wuxian's weaknesses, the siege might not have succeeded. Should I remind you folks of the item that Wei Wuxian possesses? Did you forget about the day that 3,000 skilled cultivators were completely annihilated? I heard that it was more than 3,000, possibly 5,000. He's most certainly out of his mind. It's a good thing that he destroyed that evil weapon before he died. Otherwise, if it was left in this world to harm humankind, his sins would have been worse. Oh, well, you know, back then, Wei Wuxian was one of the most promising cultivators, coming from a highly distinguished clan and finding success at a young age. How on earth did he end up where he is now? This proves that one can only cultivate by following the right path. Using these dishonest practices would only seem beneficial at first glance. Look what happened in the end. Not even a whole corpse was left of him. Not everything was because of his cultivation path. Wei Wuxian's personality is quite immoral. one's deeds will be paid, one way or another. What goes around always comes around. Nobody... After Wei Wuxian's death, the period is drawn on the topic. The discussions of the people are mostly the same, with a few unconventional opinions being brought down immediately. However, the elephant in the room stayed in the back of everyone's mind. Nobody could summon Wei Wuxian's soul, which was meant that his soul had disappeared. It might have been torn apart by the millions of ghosts that devoured him, or it might have escaped. If it was the first, then all is well. Then again, nobody doubts that the Yiling Patriarch has the power to move mountains and empty seas. If it was the last, his soul would eventually return to revive in his body. When the day comes, the cultivation world, or even all immortal land, would be faced with the most insane damnation and revenge, sinking into nothing but chaos and despair. The various clans set 121 stone beasts upon Lanzhang Hill, and initiated frequent soul-summoning rituals, followed by heightened vigilance and searches for strange occurrences from all over the world. In the first year, nothing happened. In the second year, nothing happened. In the third year, nothing happened. In the 13th year, nothing happened either. More and more people were starting to believe that maybe the Yiling Patriarch actually perished. Even if he was capable of turning the world upside down, it was eventually, finally, his turn to be toppled over. Nobody would remain at the top for all of eternity. Legends are only legends. Alright. Oh, it's loading slowly. There we go. It says chapter 2, but I guess this is technically actually chapter 1. Oh my god, wait, there's a time on how long it takes to read. Neat. That's nice. I like that. I don't remember that being there when I first read this, which was a year and a half ago. It was very long ago. Okay. Wei Wuxian received a kick just as he opened his eyes. A voice thundered beside his ear. "Stop playing dead!" The kick threw him backwards, headfirst onto the ground, fighting the urge to vomit. A thought formed in his head. That's quite a lot of courage you have to kick me, the Patriarch. It was his first time hearing a human voice in quite a few years, let alone such a loud, fierce shriek. His head swirled and ears buzzed with the echoes of the voice. "Whose land do you think you're living on? Whose rice are you eating? Whose money are you spending? What's wrong with taking a few of your belongings? Everything you own should be mine anyways." Aside from this adolescent, duck-like voice, there were the clunks and ransacking chests and smashing objects as well. His eyes gradually cleared up. A dimly lit ceiling appeared in his sight, followed by a slant-browed person with a sickly composition, drenching him with spittle. "How dare you tell father and mother? Did you really think that anybody in this house is going to listen to you? You actually thought I was scared of you?" A few servant-like hunks shifted over. "Young master, everything is smashed." The young master asked, "How did you finish it this quickly?" The manservant replied, "There's nothing much inside the shack anyways." The young master seemed to be quite pleased, poking Wei Wuxian forcefully on the nose. "You dared to tell on me, and now look at you, playing dead on the ground. For whom? As if anyone actually wants these piles of junk. Now that I've smashed everything, let's see how you're going to tell on me in the future. Are you proud of yourself just because you've studied cultivation for a few years? Well, how does it feel when you've been kicked back home like a stray dog?" Wei Wuxian thought warily. "I'm not pretending to be dead at all, since I've actually been dead for a couple of years. Who is this? Where am I? When did I do something as immoral as stealing another's body?" The young master let out enough anger by kicking the person and wrecking the house, and strutted out with his two manservants, slamming the door with a bang. He shouted his orders. "Watch carefully! Don't let him outside any time this month, or I'll make a fool of himself again." As the group went away, silence fell upon the room. Wei Wuxian thought about getting up. However, his limbs failed to uphold himself, so he lay down again. He turned on his side and stared dizzily at the strange environment and the heaps of mess on the ground. A bronze mirror rested on the side, probably thrown to the ground. Wei Wuxian grabbed at it and looked at the mirror, only to see a ghastly pale face, with 2 asymmetrical piles of red on each side of his cheeks, and a blood-red tongue on the features. And he would look like a hanged ghost. He tossed the mirror to the side and wiped his face, finding his hand covered with white powder. Fortunately, the body wasn't born this way. It was only one of the owner's penchants. He was no doubt a man, yet he was covered with makeup, not to mention badly applied makeup. Ugh, how unbearable. Taken aback by the shock, some energy came back to him and he finally sat up, noticing the circular array beneath him. The array was scarlet in color and crooked in shape, appearing to be drawn by hand, using blood as the medium. Still damp and emitting a strong scent, the array was filled with warped scribbles of incantations, which were somewhat smudged by his body and came across as gruesome nonetheless. After all, Wei Wuxian was known as the supreme leader and grand master of demonic cultivation, so he was most certainly accustomed to vile-looking arrays such as this one. It turned out that, in fact, he did not seize the body of another. He was offered one. It was an ancient, forbidden technique. Compared to an array, it resembled a curse more. The caster of the array injures themselves by creating incisions on their body and draws the array and writes the incantations using their own blood. Finishing by sitting in the center of the array, they can then summon an extremely villainous ghoul and ask it to complete their wish. The price to pay was to offer their body to the evil spirit, and then their own soul returning back to Earth. This was a forbidden technique, opposite to stealing another's body, offering one's body. Because of the grave sacrifices, only few people were brave enough to actually put it into effect. After all, there were hardly any wishes strong enough for a living person to willingly sacrifice everything that they own. Over thousands of years, only 3 or 4 examples have been proven true and recorded by history. Without exception, the 3 or 4 people's wishes were the same, to take revenge. Wei Wuxian refused to accept this. Why would he be put in the category of villainous ghouls? Although his reputation wasn't great, and he had died in a horrifying way, he neither haunts the living nor seeks vengeance. He could swear that he can't find another wandering ghost as harmless as him. No. Okay. The difficult part was that as soon as the evil spirit has taken over the body of the caster, the contract is sealed by default. The evil spirit must grant their wish, or else the curse will cause a backlash, and the spirit in possession of the body will be completely annihilated, never to be born again. Wei Wuxian raised his hands to find that, unsurprisingly, both of his wrists were crisscrossed with multiple cuts. He proceeded to take off his belt under the black clothes. His chest and stomach areas were also covered with what seemed to be lacerations from a sharp tool. Although the bleeding had stopped, Wei Wuxian knew that these weren't normal wounds. If he didn't fulfill the wish of the body's owner, the wounds would not be able to heal. It would worsen as time goes on, and the time limit was passed. Both his soul and his body would be ripped apart. Wei Wuxian confirmed his situation several times, repeating, "How can this happen to me?" In his heart, even more times, he could finally stand upright, leaning against the wall. Even though the house was large in size, it was empty and shabby, with sheets and blankets looking like they hadn't been changed in a while. There was a bamboo basket in the corner. It was supposed to be for storing trash, but having been kicked over earlier, all the scraps tumbled out onto the ground. Wei Wuxian scanned around the room and picked up a crumpled piece of paper. He unfolded it and was surprised to see it crammed with words. He hurriedly gathered all of the paper, and the words on the paper must have been written by the owner of this body to vent when he felt stressed. Some sentences were incoherent and disordered. Anxiety leaped off the page through the distorted handwriting. Wei Wuxian sat through every single piece of paper and began to notice that something was wrong. He took a few guesses and roughly understood the state of things. It turned out to be that the owner of this body was named Mo Jianyu. His location was called Mo Village. Mo Jianyu's grandfather was from a rich family of the area. His family was few in number, and although he tried at it, he only had 2 daughters. Their names were not mentioned, but the elder one was the daughter of his principal wife, looking for a husband to marry into the family, while the younger one was the daughter of a servant. The Mo family originally wanted to hastily give her to someone, but an adventure awaited her. When she was 16, the leader of a well-known cultivation family was passing by and fell in love with her at first sight. Sure, love. Okay, is that what you're gonna call it? Everyone admires cultivators. Cultivation families, in the eyes of common folk, are like people favored by God, mysterious and noble. In the beginning, the people in Mo Village regarded the topic with contempt, but because the sect leader often helped out, the Mo family received plenty of advantages, and so, the direction of the discussions changed. and the Mo family took pride in the matter, while everyone else also envied the opportunity. The second lady of Mo bore one son for the leader, Mo Jianyu, but not for long, since the sect leader was only involved with her to experiment with something new. He grew tired of it in a few years. After Mo Jianyu turned 4, his father never came back again. Gradually, the opinions of Mo village people changed again. The original contempt and scorn returned, alongside with disdainful pity. The second lady of Mo did not want to accept this. She firmly believed that the sect leader would not turn a deaf ear to his own son. Sure enough, when Mo Jianyu turned 14, the sect leader took him back. The second lady stuck up her nose in the air again and told everyone that her son would most certainly become an immortal as fast as he could and bring glory to his ancestors. However, before Mo Jianyu could achieve a success in cultivation and inherit his father's position, he was driven back. On top of that, he was driven back shamefully. Mo Jianyu was a homosexual and had enough nerve to harass the other disciples. The scandal was revealed to the public, and he had few achievements in terms of cultivation. There were no reasons for him to stay in the clan. Like adding frost to snow, aside from the event itself, when Mo Jianyu returned, he had often behaved in a crazy manner, almost as if his life was scared out of him. The story was almost too complex to be put into word. Wei Wuxian's eyebrow twitched. Not only a lunatic, a homosexual lunatic as well. The first time I ever read this, I lost it over that line. I was like, this is gonna be great. I love it here. Like, God, what a memories. God. Okay. That explained why there were enough rouge and powder on his face to make him look like a hanged ghost, and also why nobody was surprised at the large bloody ray on the ground. Even if Mo Jianyu painted the whole room red with blood, from the tiles on the ground to the walls to the ceilings, the others wouldn't be overly surprised. After all, everyone knew that his head had a screw loose. After he went back home dejectedly, he was bombarded with ridicule. The situation seemed like it was beyond redemption, and the second lady of Mo was not able to withstand the blow, shortly after choking to death because of the trauma. At this time, Mo Jianyu's grandfather had already passed away. The first lady of Mo was in charge of the family, but ever since a young age, she had been unable to understand her younger sister, including her sister's son. She had an only child, Mo Jiwan, who happened to be the person who ransacked the place earlier. When Mo Jianyu was taken away by his father, the first lady was jealous and wanted to have even the slightest relationship with the cultivation sect. She hoped that the envoy who came would take Mo Jian to cultivate as well. Of course, she was refused, or rather, ignored. This was most certainly not a case of selling cabbage. One cannot simply bargain, much less buy one and get another for free. Strangely confident, this family all held that the thought that Mo Jian had the potential and talent. They believed that if, back then, he was sent instead, he would have won recognition from the sect, unlike his disappointing cousin. Although, when Mo Jianyu left, Mo Jian was still young. He was repeatedly instilled with nonsense such as this, and believed in them wholeheartedly. Every 2 or 3 days, he would find Mo Jianyu and humiliate him, cursing him for snatching his road to cultivation. At the same time, he was found great interest in talismans, elixirs, and magic tools, regarding all of them as his possessions and doing whatever he wanted with them. Although Mo Jianyu often switched in and out of being a lunatic, and he did understand that he was degraded by others, he tolerated it, but Mo Yuan further intensified his behavior, almost emptying his whole room. His patience had finally drained out, and he complained to his aunt and uncle, causing Mo Yuan's commotion from this morning. The words on the paper were small and compact, which hurt Wei Wuxian's eyes. He thought to himself, how fucked up is this person's life? No wonder Mo Jianyu would rather use the forbidden technique to sacrifice his body and ask villainous ghouls to take revenge. The pain from his eyes transferred to his head, supposedly to use the forbidden technique. The caster would chant their wish silently as the evil spirit being summoned. Wei Wuxian would have been able to hear his specific requirements. However, it was likely that Mo Jianyu copied fragmented excerpts from the technique somewhere and skipped this step. Although Wei Wuxian guessed that he wanted to take revenge on the Mo family, but how should he do it? To what extent? To retrieve the items that were taken from him, or to beat up everyone of the Mo family, or to wipe out the whole family? In all likelihood, it was probably to wipe out the whole family. After all, anyone who touched upon the cultivation world would know that what phrases were most often used to describe him. ungrateful, eccentric, not recognizing his own family, intolerable by heaven, and other spectacular terms. Was there anyone else more villainous than him? If Mo Jianyu dared to summon him specifically, the wish was most likely not an easily fulfilled one. Wei Wuxian couldn't help but say, "You've got the wrong person." Alright, so I think when it comes to like the author notes, or like translator notes of words, I'm not gonna read them unless they are requested, because I feel like people tuning in here are largely like familiar with the fandom in a way that they should know these words, even if they haven't read the book specifically, you know? So, yeah, if you want me to clarify what a word means, I will. But I'm just gonna kind of keep going. However, some of the translator notes I think are kind of funny, so I might read those. Like, I think at the end of this chapter, or the next one, in reference to Lan Wangji, they said our Seme pops up in the next chapter, and I'm like, oh god, not yaoi terms. Anything but that. Alright. Anyways. Okay. Wei Wuxian wanted to wash his face to have gaze upon the face of his body's owner after death, but there wasn't any water in the room, not even for drinking or washing. The only basin-like container was probably, he suspected, for lavatory purposes instead of cleansing. He pushed the door, but it was fastened with a latch, probably to prevent him from wandering outside. None of these things made him feel the joy of reincarnation at all. He figured he might as well sit in the lotus position and get used to his new home. Time flew by and the day had passed. When he opened his eyes, sunlight seeped from the gaps in the door and windows. Although he could stand up and walk around, he still felt lightheaded. Wei Wuxian was puzzled. Mo Jianyu's amount of spiritual powers are insignificant enough to be ignored, so there shouldn't be a reason as to why I can't control his body properly. Why doesn't it work? Then, a noise came from his stomach, and he realized that this wasn't related to his spiritual powers at all. In fact, it was because his body had not practiced inedia and felt hunger. If he didn't scavenge for food, he might become the first villain in school who starved to death upon arrival. Wei Wuxian lifted his foot and was about to kick the door open when suddenly the sound of approaching footsteps appeared. Someone stomped on the door and grunted, "It's mealtime!" Nonetheless, there was no indication of the door being opened. Wei Wuxian lowered his head and saw a miniature door on the bottom of this one, opening, with a small bowl set in front of it. The servant shouted again, "Chop chop! What are you waiting for? Take the bowl out after you finish!" The door was slightly smaller than the kind for dogs to crawl through. It didn't allow the passage of humans, but bowls could easily be taken inside. There were 2 dishes and 1 serving of rice, which looked quite unpleasant. Wei Wuxian played with the pair of chopsticks that were stuck into the rice, feeling quite bitter. The Yiling Patriarch had just returned to the mortal world, but the first thing he came upon was a kick and a scolding, not to mention the leftovers that served as his welcoming meal. Where were the blood and gore, the ruthless slaughter, the absolute destruction? Who would believe him? He was like a tiger in a flatland. Tiger, I don't know if I said that right. The dragon in shallow water. The phoenix without feathers, losing his advantage and belittled by those weaker than him. Then, the servant outside spoke again, with a laughter this time. "Ah Ding, come here." I know that. The sweet voice of a girl answered from a distance. "Ah Tong, are you delivering the meal to the one in there again?" Ah Tong clicked his tongue. "Why else would I come to this ominous courtyard?" Ah Ding's voice sounded closer, as if she was in front of the door. "You just deliver 1 meal a day, and nobody cares if you're lazy. This is such an idle task, yet you think it's ominous. Look at me, I'm busy to the point that I can't even go outside to play." Ah Tong complained. "Delivering his meal is not the only work I do. How can you dare to go outside these days? So many walking corpses out there. Everyone's locking themselves in their houses." That's a typo. Wu Wuxian. Wei Wuxian squatted by the door and listened while eating. It appeared to be that ever since a while ago, the Mo village hadn't been peaceful. Walking corpses, like their name, were dead people who could move, a type of low-level altered corpse. Unless the deceased person held strong resentment, they were usually dull-eyed and sluggish. They weren't overly dangerous, but they were enough to alarm the average person, especially their vomit-inducing stench. However, to Wei Wuxian, they were the most obeying puppets. When he heard them being mentioned, he felt a sense of familiarity. Otong seemed to be making a face. If you want to go outside, you'll have to take me so that I can protect you. Oding replied, You? Protect me? Stop bragging. Are you sure you can defeat those things? Otong said bitterly. If I can't defeat them, other people can't either. Oding laughed. How do you know that other people can't defeat them? Let me tell you, today some cultivators came to Mo Village. I heard that they were from a very prominent clan. The madam is talking to them in the main hall, and everyone in town is watching. Can't you hear the noise? I don't have time to play around with you. They might give me some work afterwards. Wei Wuxian listened attentively. Sure enough, the faint bustling sounds of people came from the east. He pondered for a moment, stood up, and kicked the door. It cracked with a clank. At the moment, the two servants, Ading and Otong, were flirting with each other and screamed when the door suddenly flung open. Wei Wuxian threw away his bowl and walked outside, flinching from the glare of sunlight. He brought his hand to the tip of his brow and closed his eyes for a moment. Just now, Otong screamed even louder than Ading, but as he took a closer look and realized that it was Mo Jianyu, the person whom everyone could humiliate, his courage came back to him. He figured that he probably lost face in front of Ading and wanted to make up for it, so he jumped over and waved his hands like he was approaching a dog. Shoo! Shoo! Go away! Why did you come out? Otong treated him even worse than he treated a beggar or a fly. Most of the time, all of the servants of the Mo family treated Mo Jianyu like this because he never resisted. Wei Wuxian gave Otong a light kick, knocking him over, and laughed. How dare a mere errand-running child to humiliate others like this? Was that? No. Okay. With that, he headed towards the commotion in the east. Quite a lot of people crowded in and around the east hall. Just as Wei Wuxian stepped into the courtyard, a woman spoke in a voice a few pitches louder than the others. A member from the younger generations of our family used to be a cultivator as well. It must have been Madame Mo trying to make connections with the cultivation family again. Wei Wuxian didn't wait for her to finish speaking and quickly hustled through the crowd to the hall and grinned. I'm coming, right here. A middle-aged lady sat in the hall with well-maintained health and wearing extravagant clothing. She was Madame Mo. Her husband sat below her, and the opposite sides had a few white-robed boys. Because of how an unkempt freak just appeared within the hall, all of the chatter came to a halt. But Wei Wuxian spoke shamelessly, as if he did not notice the motionless atmosphere at all. Who was calling me earlier? I'm the one that used to be a cultivator. I'm the only one. Okay. There was too much powder on his face, and as he smiled, the powder sprinkled off. A younger cultivator was on the brink of laughing, letting out a sound. His face grew serious again as another one, seemingly the leader of the group, gave him a disapproving look. Wei Wuxian followed the voice and scanned over. He thought that the servants were being ignored and exaggerated the whole situation, but he was surprised to see that they were really disciples of a prominent clan. The boys wore robes and drifting sleeves and flowing belts, appearing to be ikemen, and doubtlessly a treat to the eyes. Looking at the uniform, it was obvious that they were from the Gusu Lan clan. They must have also been younger generations of blood relationship to the Lan family, as they all wore white forehead ribbons around a finger's width with cloud patterns sewn onto them. The motto of the Gusu Lan clan was righteousness. The forehead ribbon implied to conduct oneself well, and the cloud pattern was the official pattern of the Lan family, of which cultivators who came from other families did not have the right to wear. Wei Wuxian got toothaches whenever he saw anybody from the Lan clan. In his past life, he had always thought of this clan's uniform as mourning clothes, which is why he would never mistake it. Lady Mo hadn't seen this nephew of hers in a while and got over the dismay after a long time when she realized who the heavily make-up person was. She was furious, but she didn't want to lose her temper and discompose herself, so she lowered her voice at her husband. Who let him out? Get him back there! Her husband promptly smiled to calm her and walked over with an irksome look, ready to pull him out of here. However, Wei Wuxian dropped to the ground, his limbs tightly clinging to the floor. Nobody could get him up, even after more servants were called to help. As Lady Mo's face darkened a bit by bit, her husband was also sweating. He scolded, "You damn madman! If you don't go back now, wait and see how I'll punish you." Although everyone in Mo Village knew that the Mo family had a young master who lost his marbles, Mo Jianyu had already hid in that dark room for a couple of years, scared to come outside. After seeing how both his face and actions were those of a monster's, people whispered among themselves, looking forward to a good show to watch. Wei Wuxian spoke. I couldn't go back if you wanted me to, he pointed at Mo Yuan, but tell him to return the things that he stole from me first. Mo Yuan did not expect that the good-for-nothing lunatic had the guts to cause trouble here, even after disciplining yesterday. His face grew pale. That's nonsense. Would it ever steal your things? Would I need to steal anything from you? Wei Wuxian said, Yeah, you didn't steal. You robbed. Madame Mo didn't say anything yet, but Mo Jian was furious, raising his foot to kick him. However, a white-robed boy carrying a sword moved his finger slightly, and Mo Jian's foot slipped, falling to the ground with his foot only scraping him. Even so, Wei Wuxian still rolled on the ground as if he was really kicked over, and pulled open the front of his robe, showing the footprint that Mo Jian made yesterday. The others thought that, obviously, Mo Jianyu couldn't have kicked himself, along with the fact that Mo Jian had always been imprudent and arrogant. Who else could have done it? No matter what, the Mo family had always been too ruthless to their own blood relative. It was plain to see that. When he first came back, he wasn't this insane, so it must have been worsened by the people of his family. Nevertheless, all is well as long as there was a good show to watch. This one was much more interesting than the cultivators. Before this, Madame Mo ignored him, as she didn't bother to argue with a sick person. She ordered the others to take him out. Now she knew. Mo Jianyu had definitely come prepared. His head was completely clear and deliberately disgraced them. She felt both shock and hatred. You made a big scene on purpose, didn't you? Wei Wuxian blinked blankly. He stole my belongings, and I'm here to retrieve them. Does that also count as making a big scene? With so many pairs of eyes staring, Madame Mo could neither hit him nor throw him out. Anger welled up deep inside of her, and she could only forcefully compromise the two sides. Stealing? Robbing? That's a bit disrespectful if you ask me. We're all part of one family, and he only wanted to take a look at them. All you want is your younger brother, so what's wrong with taking a few of your things? As an older brother, you shouldn't be reluctant to lend one or two playthings, should you? It's not as if you won't return them. The boys from the Lan clan stared speechlessly at one another. These boys grew up in a cultivation clan, exposed to splendor and only that. They'd probably never seen farces like this, or even heard of this kind of logic. Wei Wuxian laughed hysterically in his mind and extended his hand. Then return them. Of course, it was impossible for Mo Jian to return anything, having either thrown them out or disassembled them. Even if he was able to return them, his pride wouldn't have allowed it. His face turned purple with anger and shouted, Mom! His glare raged. Are you really allowing him to treat... I think that's supposed to be in quotes. Are you really allowing him to treat me like this? Or is that supposed to be inner dialogue? I'm not sure. Lady Mo glowered at him, signaling for him to not worsen the situation. However, Wei Wuxian spoke again. Not only should he not have stolen my belongings, he shouldn't have stolen them in the middle of the night. Everyone knows that I'm into men. Even if he was not ashamed, I knew not to look suspicious. Lady Mo gasped and shouted, What are you talking about in front of the villagers? How shameless. All you want is your cousin. In terms of running wild, Wei Wuxian was definitely a master. In the past, if he wanted to run wild, he would have to keep his status in mind. But now, he was a lunatic anyways, which meant that he could do whatever he wanted, whichever way he wanted. He stiffened his neck and argued defiantly. Even though he knew that I was his cousin, he chose not to avoid me. So who is more shameless? I don't care about your reputation, but don't ruin my innocence. I still want to find a good man. Mo Jian let out a loud scream and started swinging a chair at him. As soon as Wei Wuxian saw that, his anger finally went out of control. He rolled over and climbed up, dodging so that the chair only smashed on the ground, falling apart in the process. The mass of people in the East Hall were originally gloating at the disgrace of the Mo family, but, after the fight started, they all fled away. Wei Wuxian bolted toward the group of boys from the Lan clan, who all gaped at the scene and yelled, Did everyone see that? Did you? The burglar's also beating someone up. How heartless. Mo Jian chased him and was close to pouncing on him when the leader of the boys hurriedly stopped him. Please calm down. Words are more powerful than weapons. Madame Mo saw that the boy was deliberately protecting the lunatic and pulled a smile warily. This is my younger sister, son. He's not so bright. Here,
Everyone from the Mo village knows that he's a lunatic and often speaks strange words that shouldn't be taken seriously. Cultivator, please. But before she finished her sentence, Wei Wuxian's head peeked from behind the boy's back and glared. Who said that my words shouldn't be taken seriously? Next time, try stealing anything from me again. You steal once, and I cut off one of your hands. Mo Yuan was originally held down by his father, but after hearing this, he was close to losing his temper again. Wei Wuxian leapt quickly outside, and the boy blocked the entrance at once, switching to another topic with a serious tone. Then we will borrow the west courtyard for the night. Please remember the things that I've talked about after nightfall. Close all of the windows and don't come outside, or worse, walk toward the courtyard. Madame Mo was shaking from anger. Yes, yes, please. Mo Yuan found it beyond belief. Mom, the lunatic insulted me in front of so many people, and that's it? You told me before. You told me that he was only a... Madame Mo commented. Be quiet. Can't you wait until we go back? Mo Yuan had never been at such a disadvantage or been disgraced like this before. With his mother's scolding making the situation worse, he was full of hatred and thought this lunatic is going down tonight. After Wei Wuxian finished flipping out, he walked out the door of the Mo family's place and showed his face around the Mo village. Although he surprised countless people, he was, in fact, loving every second of it, and finally realized the delight of being a lunatic. He was even starting to approve of the makeup that resembled a hang ghost, almost unwillingly to wash it away. He fixed his hair and looked at his wrists. The cuts didn't seem like they were healing at all, which meant that a slight revenge like this would not be approved by the forbidden technique. Would he really have to eliminate the Mo family? To be honest, it wouldn't be a difficult task. Wei Wuxian strolled back to the Mo family's west courtyard. The disciples of the Lan clan God were standing on top of the roofs and walls, discussing with a solemn look. Although the Gusu Lan clan contributed greatly during the siege on him, at that time these juniors were either not born yet or still young children. He shouldn't direct his hatred towards them, so Wei Wuxian decided to linger around and observe what they were going to do. After a while, he felt like something was wrong. Why did the fluttering black flags on the tops of roofs and walls look so familiar to him? 1 second. This type of flag was called the phantom attraction flag. If it was set on a living person, it would attract all of the spirits, wrong ghosts, moving corpses, or evil beings within a certain area, so that they would only attack that person. Because that flag-bearing person would be turned into a living target, it was also called the target flag. It could be set on a house, but the house must have living humans inside of it. Then, the attack range would expand to include everyone in the house. Because of how there would always be a sinister energy that surrounded the area in which the flag was set, as if there was a swirling black wind, they were also called black wind flags. Arranging the flag formation in the west courtyard and not allowing anyone to approach them must have meant that they wanted to lead the walking corpses here and capture them in one go. As for why they looked familiar, how could they not have come across as familiar? The creator of the Phantom Attraction flags was none other than the Yiling Patriarch. It seemed that, although the cultivation world hated him on the surface, they still used the inventions that he came up with. A disciple standing on the roof saw him lingering around and spoke. Please go back. This isn't where a person like you should come. Although he was being driven away, it was out of kindness, and the tone also differed from those of the servants of the Mo family. Wei Wuxian caught him off guard and quickly hopped up, grabbing one of the flags. The disciple was startled and jumped down to chase him. Do not move! That's not something you should take! Wei Wuxian yelled while running away, looking like a real lunatic with his hair disheveled and limbs flinging about. I'm not giving it back! I'm not giving it back! I want this thing! I want this! The disciple caught up to him in a few strides and grabbed his arm. If you're not going to give it back, I'm gonna hit you! Wei Wuxian held onto the flag, unwilling to let go of it. The leader of the boys was setting up the flag formation and lightly hopped off the roof when he heard the ruckus. Jingyi, cut it out. Do not make a fuss and just take the flag. Lan Jingyi spoke. Shizhui, I didn't actually hit him. Look at him messing up the flag formation. During the tug-of-war, Wei Wuxian had already checked over the phantom flag attraction in his hands. The motifs were drawn correctly, and the incantations were complete. There wasn't any error, so nothing would go wrong while using them. However, the person who drew this on the flag was lacking in experience, so it would only attract evil being and moving corpses within 5 li. That should be enough, though. There shouldn't be any malicious creatures in a place as small as Mo Village. Lan Shizhui smiled at him. Young Master Mo, the sky is growing dark, and we're going to start capturing the walking corpses soon. It would be dangerous at nighttime, so it would be best for you to return to your room. Wei Wuxian silently approved of him. The flag formation was set in an organized way, and his mannerisms were also respectful, making him a disciple with astonishing potential. He didn't know that a conservative clan such as the Lan clan, he didn't know that at a... Who on earth brought up such a junior? Lan Shizhui spoke again. This flag. Before he finished, Wei Wuxian threw the Phantom Attraction flag on the ground and humphed. It's just a flag, so what's the big deal? I can draw way better than this. He sprinted off the moment he threw the flag away. The boys who stood on the roof to watch the bustle almost fell off from laughter after hearing his ridiculous words. Lan Jingyi also chuckled from anger and picked up the Phantom Attraction flag. What a maniac. Wei Wuxian continued to roam around, doing nothing, and finally moved back to the small courtyard that belonged to Mo Jianyu. He ignored the broken bolt and the mess on the ground and picked up a relatively clean spot and sat in the lotus position again. However, before daylight came, he was pulled out of meditation by some noise from outside. A series of chaotic footsteps quickly approached, alongside with cries and screams. Wei Wuxian heard a few phrases being repeated. Barge in and drag him out. Notify the officers. What do you mean, notify the officers? Beat him to death! He opened his eyes to see that a few servants had already come in. The whole courtyard was set alight with fire. Someone cried out, drag the insane murderer to the main hall and make him pay for it with his life. Let's see. How much is only 500 meters? Or 1/3 of a mile. That's pretty fucking big. So that's like 1 2/3 mile. Okay. That's big. My concept of a mile is minimal, but I think I get it. Anyone else used to be an active kid, so you would run miles, like kind of just for fun, and now I can't do anything. I have no muscles. I can't run that long. I will be completely out of breath. I can't lift. I can't do anything anymore. What happened to me? Anyways, okay. Next chapter. I'm gonna continue drinking some water, actually, so I don't completely destroy my throat by reading so much. Alright. Wei Wuxian's first thought was that something went wrong with the flag formation that the boys set. His inventions needed to be used extremely carefully or else disasters could happen. This was also why he went to check if there was anything wrong with the motifs that were drawn. As a few pair of big hands came to drag him outside, Wei Wuxian straightened his body and allowed them to do so without difficulty, so that he wouldn't have to walk by himself. The East Hall was bustling with people, almost more crowded than when the villagers of Mo Village gathered here. All of the servants and relatives were present. Some were still in their undergarments and didn't yet have the time to brush their hair, but everyone looked terrified. Madame Mo was collapsed in her seat, as if she just woke up from a swoon. The streaks of tears could be seen on her cheeks, and tears still lingered in her eyes. But as Wei Wuxian was dragged inside, her sorrowful gaze immediately became hateful. A human-shaped object lay on the ground, with its body covered by a white cloth, and only the head being revealed. Lan Shizhui and the other boys wore heavy expressions, bending down to check the situation and talking in soft voices. The conversation leaked into Wei Wuxian's ears. Less than 3 minutes have passed since the body was discovered? After subduing the walking corpse, we hurried from the west courtyard to the east courtyard and found the corpse in the hallway. The human-shaped thing was, apparently, Mo Jian. Wei Wuxian took a glance at it and couldn't help but look again. The corpse looked like Mo Jian in some ways, but unlike him in other ways, although the features were clearly that of his petty cousins. The cheekbones were deeply sunken, eyes bulging, and skin wrinkled. Compared to the youthful Mo Jian before this, it was as if he aged 20 years. It also seemed like his blood and flesh were sucked out of him, turning him into a skeleton with only a thin layer of skin on the outside. If before this Mo Jian was just ugly, now his corpse was both old and ugly. As Wei Wuxian was scrutinizing the corpse, Madame Mo suddenly rushed toward him with a gleaming dagger in her hand. Being light on his feet, Lan Shizhui quickly knocked the dagger off before he had a chance to talk. Madame O shrieked at him. My son died a tragic death, so I'm only avenging him. What are you stopping me for? Wei Wuxian hid behind Lan Shizui's back again and spoke while squatting. How does your son's tragic death concern me? During the day, Lan Shizhui saw Wei Wuxian make a scene in the East Hall, and afterwards he also heard a lot of exaggerated rumors from other people. He felt extremely sympathetic to the invalid and couldn't help but take his side. Madame Mo, seeing from your son's condition, his flesh and essence have been drawn out of him, which means that he was killed by evil beings, not him. Madame Mo's chest heaved. You know nothing! The lunatic's father is a cultivator. He must have learned a lot of demonic spells from him. Lan Shizhui turned around to look at the seemingly dull-witted Wei Wuxian and spoke again. Madam, there's a lack of evidence, so... The evidence is on my son! Madame Mo pointed at the corpse on the ground. Look for yourselves. Ayuan's remains already told me who murdered him. Not needing the other people to do it, Wei Wuxian lifted the white cloth by himself. From the head down to the feet, there was something missing on Mo Xiuan's dead body. His left arm, severed from below his shoulder, had disappeared. Madame Mo spoke. Do you see this? Everyone who were here heard what that lunatic said, right? He said that if Ayuan touched his belongings again, he would cut off his hand. After the burst of emotion, she covered her face and sobbed. My poor Ayuan. Although he didn't do anything to him at all, he was not only framed, but also killed as well. The lunatic is out of his mind. Out of his mind? It had been a few years since he last heard the phrase being used to describe him, so it was quite cordial. Wei Wuxian pointed at himself, but no words came to him. He didn't know if he was the ill one or if it was Madame Mo. When he was younger, he talked quite a lot about exterminating entire families and clans, killing millions of people, creating rivers of blood, and other cruel actions. But most of the time, they were empty words. If he could actually do the things that he said, he would have been dominating the cultivation world. Madame Mo's true intentions weren't to avenge for him, but to find someone to let out her resentment on. Wei Wuxian, that... Alright, Wei Wuxian didn't want to be bothered with her, although for a moment and stuck out his hand to Mo Xiuan's arm. He fished around for a moment and pulled something out, unfolding it in front of him. Surprisingly, it was a phantom attraction flag. Instantly, he realized what was going on and uttered under his breath, he had it coming. When Lan Shizhui and the others saw what was taken out of Mo Xiuan's arms, they also understood the situation. Associating this with the farce that happened today, the cause was easy to guess. During the day, Mo Xiuan had lost face because the Mo Xianyu's crazy behavior and loathed him, still wanted to square up with him. However, Mo Xianyu wandered outside for a long while, so Mo Xiuan planned to sneak up at him at night, when he would be returning. When night had fallen, he secretly went outside and was passing the west courtyard when he saw the phantom attraction flags on the walls. Although he was repeatedly told not to go outside or near the west courtyard at night, and especially to stay away from these black flags, Mo Xiuan thought that he was told to do so because they were scared of people stealing valuable weapons. He had no idea about the dangerous effects of these phantom attraction flags, or that if he held it, he would be turned into a living target. He got addicted to stealing his cousin's talismans and magic tools, and he would always itch to take odd items like this, not giving up until he obtained it. Therefore, when the owners of the flags were subduing walking corpses in the west courtyard, he quietly took one. The flag formation utilized 6 flags, of which 5 were set in the west courtyard, and with the boys from the Lan family as bait. However, they were all carrying countless magic tools on them, and although Mo Xiuan only took a single flag, he didn't have any tools for protection on him. It was common sense to pick on the weak, so the evil beings would naturally be attracted to him. If there were only walking corpses, then it wouldn't matter too much. Even if he was bitten, he wouldn't die immediately. And... oh my god. Keep yawning. Even if he was bitten, he wouldn't die immediately and could still be saved. Unfortunately, the phantom attraction flag accidentally attracted something worse than a walking corpse. The unknown being was what killed Mo Xiuan and took his arm. Wei Wuxian raised his wrist. Sure enough, one of the cuts on his right hand had healed. It looked like that he had scored a lucky hit. The sacrificial contract had already deemed the death of Mo Xiuan as his doing. Madame Mo was well aware of her son's foibles, but she wasn't willing to admit that Mo Xian caused his own death. Due to impatience and rage, she grabbed the teacup and threw it in the direction of Wei Wuxian's head. If you didn't frame him in front of so many people yesterday, would he go out in the middle of the night? It's all your fault, you son of a bitch! Wow. Wei Wuxian saw it coming and dodged to the side. Madame Mo turned to Lan Shizhui and screeched, "And you bunch of useless fools! You cultivate and ward off evil spirits, but you can't even protect him! All you want is still a child!" The actual word is... Yeah, okay. The boys were still young. They hadn't been outside much and were too inexperienced to find anything wrong with the area, which was why they felt sorry for not detecting an evil being as fierce as this one. Nonetheless, as Madame Mo's senseless scolding, they all looked blue in the face. After all, they grew up in a prominent family, so nobody dared to treat them like this. In Gusulan clan was extremely strict to his disciples, forbidding violence against powerless every man, not even allowing disrespect. Therefore, even if they felt displeased, they had to keep everything down with dark expressions. However, Wei Wuxian couldn't stand it any longer and thought, it has been so many years, but the Land Clan's values are still the same. What's the use of their so-called self-restraint? Watch me do this the right way. He spat loudly and spoke. Who do you think you're taking your anger out on? Did you really see them as your servants? They traveled far and wide to come here and exercise evil spirits for you without taking a penny. Do they owe you anything? How old is your son? He should be at least 17. And so, how is he still a child? How young of a child does he have to be to not understand basic human language? Did they not repeatedly instruct him not to touch anything in the formation and not approach the west courtyard? Your son sneaked out at night on his own. Is it my fault, or is it his? Lan Jingyi and the others let out a breath of air, faces not so dark anymore. Madame Mo was both extremely mournful and resentful, and all she could think about was the word death. Not her own death so that she could be with her son, but the deaths of everyone in the world, especially the ones in front of her right now. She had a habit of ordering her husband to do everything, so she knocked him. Call everyone inside! Even so, her husband was in a trance, possibly because of the trauma of his only child passing away. He went as far as backhandedly push her. It caught Madame Mo by surprise and she fell onto the ground. In the past, Madame Mo didn't even need to push him. She just raised her voice. He would comply immediately. So how dare he strike back today? The servants were all scared out of their wits from their expression. Ading helped her out while quivering. Madame Mo clutched her chest and spoke in a trembling voice. You get out of here as well! Her husband seemed like he didn't hear anything. Ading gave a few looks to Atong, and Atong hurriedly helped his master to walk outside. The East Hall was in chaos. As Wei Wuxian saw that the family had finally silenced, he intended to examine the corpse again. However, before he took another look at it, a high-pitched scream pierced through the air, and it was from the courtyard. The people in the hall rushed outside. On the ground of the east courtyard, there were two twitching bodies. The first was that of Atong, still alive, collapsed on the ground. The other fallen body was wrinkled and withered, as if the blood and the flesh had been emptied dry. The left arm was already gone, but no blood came out of the wound. The condition of the corpse was the same as Mo Xiuan's. Madame Mo brushed off Ading's supporting hand a second ago, but as she saw the corpse on the ground, her eyes widened, and she was finally out of energy to throw another fit. As she fainted, Wei Wuxian happened to be next to her and gave her a hand, passing her to Ading, who came running. He looked at his right hand to see that another one of the cuts was also gone. It was merely a few seconds before they walked over the threshold of the hall, not even past the east courtyard yet, and saw Madame Mo's husband die distressingly. Lan Shizhui and Lan Jingyi and the others also grew pale in the face. Lan Shizhui was the first to calm down and ask Atong, who lay on the ground, "Did you see what it was?" Atong was almost scared to death, unable to open his mouth. Even after a few moments of asking, Atong still couldn't answer, and only shook his head repeatedly. Lan Shizhui was burning with anxiety. He took another disciple to take him back inside, and turned to Lan Jingyi. "Did you send the signal?" Lan Jingyi answered, "I did, but if there are no seniors who can assist us in the area, it would take at least an hour for our people to come here. What should we do now? We don't even know what it was." Of course, it would be impossible for them to leave. If the disciples of a clan only cared about their own well-being when facing evil spirits, it would not only bring disgrace upon the clan, they themselves would also be ashamed to face others. The frightened people of the Mo family couldn't go either, because it was likely that the evil being was among them, so nothing would be gained from going away. Lan Shizhui gritted his teeth. "Wait here for the reinforcements." Now that the signal for help had been sent, other cultivators would come to aid them within a short period of time. To prevent things from getting out of hand, Wei Wuxian should withdraw and keep away from the situation. If the persons who came happened to know him or fought with him before, it would be hard to say what would happen next. However, with the curse, he couldn't even leave Mo Village anytime soon. In addition, with the being that was attracted here had taken the lives of 2 people within such a short amount of time, which meant that it must have been extremely vicious. If Wei Wuxian left now, when the helpers came, the streets of Mo Village might be packed with corpses who lost their left arms, including a few disciples of blood relation to the Gusulan clan as well. After pondering for a moment, Wei Wuxian told himself, "Finish it quickly." Yep, there it is! Translator's note. Good news! The seme is going to appear briefly in the next chapter. Like, what? Why'd they have to say it like that? they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to do that, but they did. What a mess. Oh, that's... Okay. Someone said that my username I've had since I was 12 sounds familiar, and I'm scared of that. That's scary. I don't like that. Okay. Let's see if I can see who's here. Oh, snap. Wait. No, are all these people actually here? Is just anyone that's, popped in? I think this might be... Are there really this many people in here? Because my phone is only telling me there's... Because I'm seeing that there's only 2 people. But I'm seeing, like, a large list. God, Twitch is dumb. Good, I'm glad. The yelling hurts my throat. But there's gonna be a lot of yelling, so gotta get used to it. I'm gonna have a sip of my coffee. Yeah. Hi. We're friends, right? You're who I think you are, right? Like you came over from Discord, right? You're who, like, I mean, your name says Aaron, but I'm checking to make sure. Yeah, but, I mean, the point of me doing this is archiving it so anyone could go back and check it. And I hope I'm not doing it wrong. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out. If I have to reread these individually just so that there will be a saved format, I might. But, you know, whatever. Yes. Hi! How are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm scared. That's so scary. Why does someone think my 12-year-old username is familiar? Anyways, I guess I'm gonna keep going. Oh, okay. Your username reminded me of a different TikTok user. But okay. I don't remember what their username actually is, but they are Brazilian? Portuguese? I'm pretty sure they speak Portuguese, so they're either Brazilian or Portuguese. But yeah. Anyways. Cool. Nice little check-in. So. Yeah. Yeah, there's like a long list of people that's showing up when I look on Streamlabs, but also Elite Chicken isn't showing up for some reason. So it's weird. It's inaccurate, and I'm confused by it. Anyways, we'll get back to reading. The boys on the side were all young and... Hang on, I'm gonna try... I don't know what that's gonna do. I don't know if that's what I want, but I'll find out. Alright, let's see. The boys on the side were all young and inexperienced. However, although they all looked nervous, they strictly stuck to their positions and protected the Mo family's house. Fixing talismans to the walls, the servant named Atong was already carried into the hall. Lan Shizhui felt his pulse with his left hand and supported Madame Mo's back with his right. He couldn't save both of them at once, and was in a terrible fix when Atong crawled up from the ground. Ading exclaimed, "Atong, you're awake!" But before her face had the time to light up, Atong raised his left hand and clutched his own neck. Seeing this, Lan Shizhui tapped on a few of his acupoints for 3 times. Wei Wuxian knew that although they looked gentle, the people from the Lan clan had extreme arm strength. I added that word, but I'm not wrong. That were the opposite of gentle. With a force like this, it would be hard for anyone to move. However, Atong seemed like he didn't feel anything, and his left hand's grip tightened, his expressions looking more painful and twisted. Lan Jingyi proceeded to grab his left hand, but it was like breaking off a chunk of iron, having no effect at all. After a moment, a crack came from his neck, and Atong's head drooped down. His neck was already broken. He actually strangled himself in front of everyone's eyes. Seeing the situation, Ading's voice wavered. "A ghost! There's an invisible ghost here! It made Atong strangle himself!" Her tone was sharp, and her voice was shrill, making everyone's blood run cold. And so they believed it, effortlessly. Wei Wuxian's judgment happened to be the opposite. It wasn't a ferocious ghost. He had examined the talisman the boys chose. All of them were spirit-fending ones, and the East Hall was literally covered with them. If it had really been a ferocious ghost, then, as it went to the East Hall, the talismans would have incinerated green flames, yet nothing was happening right now. It was not the group of kids' fault for reacting too slow, but the creature was indeed cruel. The cultivation world had a strict definition for the category of ferocious ghosts. They had to kill at least one person a month and continue the behavior for at least 3 months. The criterion was set by Wei Wuxian himself, and it was probably still being used. He was the best at dealing with this kind. To him, killing one person in several days would be considered a ferocious ghost who killed frequently. This thing killed 3 people at once, and within such a short time period. It would be hard for even a capable cultivator to think of a solution immediately, let alone these juniors who had just started their careers. As he was thinking, the candlelight flickered, a sinister wind passed, and all of the lanterns and candles in the courtyard in the East Hall died out. The moment the lights were extinguished, screams came from everywhere. Everyone pushed and pulled, wanting to escape as fast as they could, stumbling and falling in the process. Lan Jingyi shouted, "Stay where you are and don't run. I'm going to catch whoever runs." He wasn't merely saying this to alarm people. In fact, evil beings love to curse people in the dark and make profits in the times of trouble. The worse the crying and chaos, the more likely it was to unknowingly attract danger. At times like this, being isolated or becoming nervous was extremely unsafe. However, everyone was frightened to death, so how could they still have ears for words like this? After a while, the people in the East Hall grew quiet, with only a few light breaths and faint sobs. It was likely that only a few people were left. Amidst the dark, a fire lit up suddenly. Lan Shizhui ignited a flame talisman. The fire from the flame talisman would not be extinguished by sinister winds. He used the talisman to light up the candle again, and the rest of the boys went to comfort the others. Under the light, Wei Wuxian casually looked at his wrists. Another cut had healed. After looking, he suddenly realized that there was something wrong about the number of cuts. Originally, he had 2 cuts on each of his wrists. One healed when Mo Ziyuan died, and another healed when Mo Ziyuan's father died. The death of the servant Atong healed 1 more of the cuts. Adding it up, only 3 cuts should have healed, with the last cut being the deepest and most hate-filled one. But right now, no cuts remained on his wrists. Wei Wuxian knew that Madame Mo was definitely one of Mo Ziyuan's targets of vengeance. The longest and deepest cut probably saved for her, yet it had disappeared. Did Mo Ziyuan suddenly reach a point of epiphany and let go of his hate? That had been impossible. His soul had already been sacrificed as a price for summoning Wei Wuxian. Only the death of Madame Mo could have healed the wound. His gaze slowly moved towards the pale-faced Madame Mo, who recently woke up and was surrounded by everyone, unless she was already dead. Wei Wuxian was sure that something was already possessing Madame Mo's body. If the being wasn't a spirit, then what was it? Suddenly, Ah Ding cried, "Hand! His hand! Ah Tong's hand!" Lan Shizhui moved the flame talisman to above Ah Tong's body. Sure enough, his left hand had disappeared as well. Left hand. With lightning speed, Wei Wuxian's mind became clear. The thing was wreaking havoc was the missing left arms finally completing the puzzle. He promptly burst out laughing. Lan Jingyi snapped, "You idiot, how can you laugh in a situation like this?" But after a second thought, he knew that he was an idiot anyway, so what was the use of haggling over him? Wei Wuxian tugged on his sleeve. "No, no!" Lan Jingyi was annoyed, pulling his sleeve back. "What? No. You're an idiot. Stop fooling around. Nobody has time to pay attention to you." Wei Wuxian pointed at the corpses of Mo Xiuan's father and Ah Tong, which lay on the ground, and spoke. "These are not them." Lan Shizhui stopped the fuming Lan Jingyi and asked, "What do you mean by these are not them?" Wei Wuxian stated solemnly, "This is not Mo Xiuan's dad, and not Ah Tong either." With his makeup-covered face, the more solemn he looked, the more he looked like an actual lunatic. Yet surrounded by the dim candlelight, his words sent chills up everyone's backs. Lan Shizhui stared for a second and asked in spite of himself, "Why?" Wei Wuxian exclaimed proudly, "Their hands! None of them were left-handed. I'm sure of this, because they'd always hit me with their right hands." Lan Jingyi spat, running out of patience. "What are you being proud for? Look at how complacent you are." However, Lan Shizhui broke into a sweat, thinking back. Ah Tong had used his left hand to strangle himself, and Madame Mo's husband had also used his left hand to push his wife. But during the day, when Mo Xianyu was causing trouble in the East Hall, the two were rushing to get him out of there, both using their right hands. It was impossible for them to suddenly turn left-handed before they died. Although he didn't know why, in order to figure out what the creature was, they had to think in the direction of left hands. After Lan Shizhui realized this, he felt surprised and looked at Wei Wuxian. He couldn't help but think, suddenly saying this, "It doesn't seem like a coincidence." Wei Wuxian only smiled. He knew that the hint was too deliberate, but he couldn't have helped it. The good thing was that Lan Shizhui didn't think too much about it either, and thought anyways, if young Master Mo was willing to remind me of it, he probably didn't mean any harm. His eyes moved away from him, passing Ah Ding, who fainted from crying too much, and landed on Madame Mo. His gaze traveled from her face down to her hands. Her arms were hanging down and were mostly hidden inside her sleeves. With only half the fingers showing, her right hand had fair, thin fingers, undoubtedly those of a woman who lived comfortably and never worked. However, the fingers on her left hand were much more than those on her right. They were also thicker, the knuckles were bent, full of power. The hand wasn't that of a woman's, it was a man's hand. Lan Shizhui commanded, "Take hold of her!" A few boys grabbed Madame Mo. Lan Shizhui said, "Excuse me," and was prepared to slap down a talisman when Madame Mo's left hand suddenly twisted in an absurd way, aiming for his throat. Unless one's bones had been broken, it was impossible for a living person to twist their arms like this. She attacked quickly and was extremely close to grabbing onto his neck, when at the same time Lan Jingyi shouted, "Hey!" and threw himself in front of Lan Shizhui, blocking the hand for him. A flash passed, and as soon as they grabbed back Lan Ji's shoulder, green flames ignited from his arm, making it loosen its grip. Lan Shizhui had escaped death and was about to thank Jingyi for it when he saw that the latter's uniform had already burnt to ashes. Looking quite awkward, Lan Jingyi took off the other half of his uniform and scolded, fuming with rage. "Why did you kick me, you lunatic?" They didn't state that, but okay. "Did you want to kill me?" Wei Wuxian scampered away like a frightened rat. "It wasn't me." It was him. Inside of the Lan clan's uniform jacket, there were compact stitchings of incantations using thin threads of the same color, included for protection. However, against strong ones like this, it could be used only once before it became invalid. During the emergency, he could only kick Lan Jingyi and use his body to protect Lan Shizui's neck. Lan Jingyi wanted to scold him again, but... What? What is this? Okay, the background music is wrong. So we're going back to, okay. Where was I? I'll just start off with this paragraph. It was him. Inside of the Lan clan's uniform jacket, there were compact stitchings of incantations using thin threads of the same color, included for protection. However, against strong ones like this, it could only be used once before it become invalid. During the emergency, he could only kick Lan Jingyi and use his body to protect Lan Shishui's neck. Lan Jingyi wanted to scold him again, but Madame Mo fell to the ground, with all the blood and flesh on her face being drained until only a thin layer of skin was left on the skull. The male arm that didn't belong to her had fallen off her shoulders. Its fingers bent freely as if it was stretching or exercising, and the throbs of its veins were clearly visible. This was the evil thing being that the phantom attraction flag had attracted. Being dismembered was a classic example of a distressing death. It was only somewhat more dignified than the way Wei Wuxian died. Unlike the situation of being crushed to powder, the limbs and parts of the corpse would be tainted with some of the resentment of the person who died, and it would want to reunite with the other parts and die with a whole corpse. Therefore, it would come up with strategies to find the other parts of the body. If it found it, it might be satisfied and rest in peace, or it might stir up more trouble. If it couldn't find the body part, it would have to put up with the second best option. What would the second best option be? It would have to be to make do with the bodies of living humans. It was like his left hand eat the left hand of a living person and replace it. After draining all of the person's blood and energy, it would abandon the body and find another container for parasitism, until it finally collected all of the parts of its corpse. As soon as the arm had possessed a person, they would die immediately, but before all the flesh had been eaten, they would still be able to walk around under its control as if the person was still alive. After it was attracted, the first container that it found was Mo Yuan. The second one was Mo Yuan's father. When Madame Mo told her husband to go away, he acted out of the norm and pushed her. Wei Wuxian originally thought that it was because he was grieving his son's death and also tired of his wife's arrogance. Now that he thought about it again, it wasn't what a father who had just lost his son should look like. It was the indifference of feeling hopeless. It was a deadly tranquility. The tranquility come from an already deceased person. The third container, Atong, and the fourth one was Madame Mo. During the chaos from when the light suddenly went out, the ghost hand had transferred onto her body. When Madame Mo died, the last cut on Wei Wuxian's wrist also disappeared. The boys from the Lan clan saw that although talismans didn't work, clothing did, and all took off their coats to cover the left hand. The layers of clothing looked like a white cocoon. After a second, the ball of white clothes ignited with a whoosh, creating a green abnormal inferno, although it would take care of the moment after a while. When the uniforms were completely burnt, the hand would emerge from within the ashes. When nobody was looking, Wei Wuxian ran toward the west courtyard. 10 or so walking corpses that were subdued by the boys, stood silently in the courtyard, sealed by the incantations drawn on the ground. Wei Wuxian kicked one of the symbols, destroying the entire formation. He clapped twice. Suddenly, with a jolt, the whites of the corpses' eyes all turned upward as if they were woken up by a bolt of thunder. Wei Wuxian spoke. "Wake up! It's time to work." He usually didn't need complex incantations to control the corpse puppets. A straightforward command would do. The walking corpses in front of him moved a few quivering steps, but as they approached Wei Wuxian, their legs grew weak and collapsed on the ground as if they were real humans. Wei Wuxian found it both funny and annoying. He clapped his hands again, this time later. However, these walking corpses were probably born in Mo Village and died here as well. Not having experienced life fully, they instinctively followed the summoner's commands, but were also horrified at the summoner, lying on the ground and afraid to get up. The crueler the being was, the better Wei Wuxian could control it. These walking corpses hadn't been trained by him and couldn't withstand direct manipulations from him. He didn't have any materials on him, which meant that he couldn't immediately make tools to ease the walking corpses. He couldn't even muddle and assemble bits and pieces. The soaring green flames in the east courtyard gradually grew dimmer. Suddenly, Wei Wuxian found his solution. Why would he need to come outside and find a dead person with stronger and a cruel personality? There were not only one, but multiple corpses in the East Hall. He ran back to the East Courtyard. As Lan Shishui's first solution failed, he found a second one. The disciples pulled out their swords and stuck them into the ground, making a sword fence. The ghost hand crashed into the fence, and they spent all their energy compressing the hilts so that it didn't break out. Paying no attention to who was entering and leaving, Wei Wuxian strode into the East Hall and grabbed Madame Mo and Mo Jian's corpses, one on each hand, and spoke in a low voice. "Wake up!" In a split second, Madame Mo and Mo Jian's eye whites turned up and started making shrill and powerful shrieks that ferocious ghosts made after they came back to life. Amidst the shrieks, another corpse trembled and crawled out, making the lowest, faintest shriek. It was Madame Mo's husband. The shrieks were loud enough, and the resentment was strong enough. Wei Wuxian smiled, feeling quite satisfied. "Do you recognize the hand outside?" Tear it apart, he commanded. The three members of the Mo family whipped out like the three clouds of black wind. The left arm fractured one of the swords, and it was about to break out when three cruel corpses without left arms came at it. Aside from being able to defy Wei Wuxian's command, the family also loathed the creature that killed them and let out their anger on the ghost hand. The main attacker was undoubtedly Madame Mo, because female corpses were often especially fierce after they were modified. Their hair was loose and their eyes were bloodshot, with nails that multiplied in length, foam gathering at the corner of her mouth, and shrieks that were enough to uplift the ceilings. She looked extremely insane. Beside her followed Mo Jian, who cooperated with her hand and used both his teeth and his hands. His father was at the end, covering for the gaps between the attacks of the two other corpses. The struggling boys were stricken dumb with amazement. They had only seen these battles between multiple fierce corpses in books and hearsay, and they all gaped as they saw the gore-splattered scene for the first time. Unable to avert their gazes, they all thought it was absolutely thrilling. The three corpses in the hand were in the middle of a tough battle when Mo Jian abruptly moved out of the way. His abdomen area was attacked by the hand, causing a few chunks of his intestines to spill out. As Madame O saw this, she screamed incessantly and shielded her son behind herself. Her attacks were more violent, but the strength of her fingers almost comparable to that of steel and iron weapons. But Wei Wuxian knew that she was gradually being overpowered. Even three cruel corpses who died recently couldn't subdue this single arm. Wei Wuxian was watching the battle attentively. His tongue was slightly curled, suppressing a sharp whistle inside of his lips, preparing it to be let out. The whistle would be able to evoke even more hostility in the cruel corpses, which might turn the tables. Then, however, it would be difficult to ensure that nobody knew it was his doing. In the blink of an eye, the hand moved like lightning, ruthlessly and precisely breaking Madame Mo's neck. Watching as the Mo family grew closer to defeat, Wei Wuxian prepared the blow whistle that he suppressed under his tongue. At the same time, the echoes of the two strums of the stringed instrument came from long away. The sound seemed to have been played by a human. The timbre was ethereal and clear, carrying the bleak chills of wind-swept pines. The creatures battling in the courtyard all stiffened as they heard the sound. Instantaneously, the boys from the Gusulan clan started beaming as if they were born again. Lan Shizhui wiped the blood off his face and raised his head, happily exclaiming, "Han Guangjun!" As soon as he heard the two faraway strums of the zither, Wei Wuxian turned around and began to leave. The sound of another strum came. This time, pitch was higher, piercing through the sky with few degrees of bitterness. The three cruel corpses backed off and covered one ear with their right hands. However, it was impossible to block out the eradication tone of the Gusulan clan by means such as this. They had just retreated a few steps, and slightly bursting sounds came from within their skulls. Because the arm had endured a tough fight, after hearing the sound of the strings again, it instantly fell to the ground. Although the fingers were still flinching, the arm was unable to move. After a short moment of silence, the boys couldn't help but to cheer loudly, celebrating the joy of surviving the incident. They had struggled through the exhilarating night, and their clan's reinforcement had finally came. Even if they'd be punished because of reasons such as being discourteous and making noises harmful to the clan's reputation, they didn't care. After waving toward the moon, Lan Shizhui suddenly realized that someone had disappeared. He tugged Lan Jingyi. "Where is he?" Lan Jingyi was absorbed in the act of rejoicing. "Who? Which one?" Lan Shizhui replied, "Young Master Mo." Lan Jingyi said, "Are you looking for that lunatic? Who knows where he ran off to? He's probably frightened by my threats to hit him." Lan Shizhui knew that Lan Jingyi had always been careless and straightforward, not thinking twice about anything or suspecting anyone. He thought, "I'll wait for Han Guangchun to come and then tell him about everything." Mo village was still asleep, but it was difficult to tell whether it was a real slumber or a faked one. Although the corpse fight was a mass of blood and gore, the villagers didn't wake up during the early morning to watch. After all, even bystanders needed to choose which events to show up at. One that involved a lot of screaming was definitely not the safest type. Wei Wuxian eliminated all evidence of the sacrificial formation in Mo Jianyu's room as fast as he could and ran out the door. Unfortunately, the person who came happened to be from the Lan clan, but even more unfortunately, he happened to be Lan Wangji. This was one of the people who had fought with him before, so he should retreat quickly. He was in a hurry to find a mount. As he passed the courtyard, he saw a big millstone inside. A donkey was tied to the handle, chewing on its mouth. When it saw him run over rashly, it seemed like he was surprised and eyed him sideways as if it was a real person. Wei Wuxian made eye contact with him for 1 second, was immediately touched by the minuscule amount of contempt in its eyes. He tried to grab the rope and pull it out, but the donkey complained by making a few loud noises. Therefore, Wei Wuxian had to use both his words and strength to deceive it and get it onto the road. As dawn came over the horizon, they went off onto the main path. Alright. Jun. Why are they referring to him that way? Jun is the Seme's alternative name. So, no, I don't like it. I don't like it! Please stop with the yaoi terminology. I hate it. I hate it. It's awful. Okay. Goodness, I am yawning a lot. Okay. Alright. No, I want to read more. I've only been reading for like a little bit over an hour. So, I'll keep going. Oh, okay. Gusulon clan will be referred to as Gusulon sect. I mistook the definition of sect as that of a clan's. Yeah. Sect is just the entire group. Clan is very specifically people of the main family. But like anyone could join a sect, like as such, Wei Wuxian joining the Zhang sect. He is not a Zhang at all. Like his surname is Wei, but he's a member of the sect, but not a member of the clan. Does everyone follow that definition? Everyone, that makes sense to everyone? Because I feel like a lot of people have confusion about that, and they think that everyone who's a part of a sect is a part of the family. Like, and there are people who might even adopt the name, but they aren't actually a part of the clan. They aren't actually related. Anyways. Yeah, I feel like that's something that people don't understand. It's not confusing to me. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So, alright. Only a few days passed, and Wei Wuxian realized that he might have made a wrong choice. The donkey that he conveniently picked up was too hard to please. Although it was only a donkey, it would exclusively eat fresh, young grass with dewdrops still hanging off them. If the tip of the grass had a yellow streak, it wouldn't eat it. Passing a farm, Wei Wuxian stole some wheat straws to feed it, but after chewing them, it spit it out with a ptoo, even louder than that of its human counterparts. If it didn't eat high-quality food, it wouldn't budge, and it'd lose its temper and kick around. For multiple times, Wei Wuxian was almost kicked up by it. Aside from that, it braised and also extremely horrible to the ear. It was useless, no matter as a mount or a pet. Wei Wuxian couldn't help but to think of his sword. The sword was probably collected by a leader of a prominent clan and would be hanging on a wall as a trophy that they could show other people. After pushing and pulling along for a few blocks, the road reached a vast farmland of some village. Under the scorching sun, there was a large pagoda tree and thick green grass underneath it. Beside the tree, there was an old well with a barrel and a dipper on the side, placed there by the farmers for any passerbys to quench their thirst. The donkey ran over there, and nothing could make it leave. Wei Wuxian hopped down and slapped its honored buttocks. What? You're definitely destined for wealth, even harder to please than me. The donkey spat at him, and while they fooled around aimlessly, a group of people approached from within the fields. The people carried handmade bamboo baskets and wore cotton clothes and straw sandals, emitting the rustic airs of rural villagers. In the group, there was a young girl with a round face that could be considered delicate, possibly because of walking too long under the sun. They also wanted to come over to rest by the shade and have some water. However, seeing that there was a wild donkey tied to the tree and a lunatic with heavy makeup and disheveled hair, they were reluctant to go over. Wei Wuxian had always thought of himself as one who was courteous toward women, so he moved over, emptying some space, and went to struggle with the donkey. After realizing that it was harmless, the people were finally at ease to come over. All of them were drenched in sweat and had ruddy cheeks. Some were fanning themselves and some fetching water. The girl sat by the well and smiled at Wei Wuxian, as if she knew that he purposely moved away. One of the people held a compass in his hand. He looked into the distance and lowered his head questioningly. We're already at the foot of Dafan Mountain, so why hasn't the pointer started moving yet? The designs and pointer on the compass looked strange, indicating that it wasn't a normal compass. It wasn't one that showed north, south, east, and west, but one that showed directions of malicious creatures, also known as the compass of evil. Wei Wuxian realized that this was probably a poor cultivation clan from the countryside. Aside from how highbrow, affluent clans, there were also smaller clans like this, who closed their doors and cultivated on their own. Wei Wuxian thought that they might have left their village to find a clan whom they were distant relatives to, or go night hunting. The middle-aged man leading the group called for people to drink and replied, "Your compass may be broken. I'll get you a new one later. Dafan Mountain is less than 10 miles ahead of us, which means that we cannot rest for too long. We've struggled through the whole journey, and if we relax now and fall behind, the other people beating us to it wouldn't have been worth it." As expected, it was a night hunt. A lot of refined cultivation clans called traveling to places and exercising evil beings hunting. Because of how these creatures often appeared at night, it was also called night hunting. There were countless cultivation clans, but only a few distinguished without contributions from its ancestors. If an average clan wanted to become famous and receive respect in cultivation world, it would have to show its abilities. Only if a clan captured a fierce monster or a terrorizing being could it have been treated seriously. This was originally Wei Wuxian's specialty area. However, during the days of traveling, he destroyed a few graves, but only found a few small ghosts. It happened to be a ghost soldier to do the evil for him, and decided to go to Rice Mountain to try his luck. If he found a good one, he'd capture it and put it to use. After the group of people finished resting, they prepared to move on. Before they left, the round-faced girl took a small, partly ripened apple out of her basket and handed it to him. "Here you go." Wei Wuxian extended his hand to receive it, grinning broadly, but the donkey also opened its mouth and bit at it. Wei Wuxian took the apple away. Seeing that the donkey craved the apple so much, he thought of it as a good idea. He gathered the long stick and a fishing thread, and hanging the apple on the end and dangled it in front of the donkey. The donkey smelled the apple, a refreshing scent from in front of him, and wanted to eat it, chasing the apple, which was always a centimeter away from him. Its speed was faster than the best horses Wei Wuxian had ever seen, leaving only dust behind it. Without stopping, Wei Wuxian arrived at Dafan Shan before dark. Upon arriving at the foot of the mountain, he finally realized that the Fan wasn't the one that he thought it was. It got its name because from looking far away, the mountain looked like a kind, chubby Buddha. There was a small town below the mountain named Buddha's Feet. The number of cultivators who gathered here were more than what he had expected. Everything was a jumble, with people from different sects and clans walking down the street, all in uniforms of different colors, almost blinding to the eye. For some reason, all of them were distressed expressions. Nobody bothered to laugh at him, though they saw his strange appearance. In the center of the street, a group of cultivators gathered, talking in serious tones. It seemed as if their opinions differed greatly even from afar. Wei Wuxian could hear them talking in the beginning. Everything was fine, but they suddenly became agitated. "I think that there are no soul-consuming beasts or spirits in the area at all. It's clear that none of the compasses are evil, showing anything." "If there isn't, then how come the 7 people lost their souls? They couldn't have all attained the same disease, could they?" "I, for one, haven't heard of this disease at all. Even if the compass of evil isn't showing anything, does that mean that there's nothing in the area? It can only point out an approximate direction without any specifics, so it shouldn't be fully trusted. Maybe there's something that can interfere with the pointer's direction." "Do you remember who created the compass of evil? I've never heard of anything that can interfere with its pointer's direction." "What do you mean? Are you implying anything with that tone of yours? Of course I know that Wei Ying created..." "Oh, that's familiar. Created the compass of evil, but it's not as if his creations are flawless. Aren't we allowed the option of doubt, at least? I never said that you can't doubt it, much less his creations are flawless, so why accuse me?" And so their argument had turned to another direction. Wei Wuxian passed them on his donkey, giggling and laughing. He didn't expect that. After so many years had passed, he was still alive in the cultivators' conversations. This was the so-called much ado about Wei. If there was ever a poll to find out whose popularity was the most lasting in the cultivation world, the winner would be none other than Wei Wuxian. To be honest, the cultivator wasn't wrong. The compass of evil in use today was the first version that he made, and were indeed not specific enough. He was in the middle of making improvements when his den was destroyed, so he had to put everyone through the inconvenience of using the imprecise version one. Anyways, creatures that ate blood and flesh were usually low levels, such as walking corpses. Only the more refined high-level monsters or ghosts were capable of eating and digesting souls. This one ate 7 at once. No wonder so many clans had gathered here. Since prey was by no means a trivial matter, it was inevitable for the compass of evil to make mistakes. Wei Wuxian reined in the rope and hopped off the donkey's back, holding the apple which had been ahead of it for the whole journey in front of its mouth. One bite only. Are you trying to eat my whole hand with that bite of yours? He ate a few bites from the other side of the apple and stuffed it back in the donkey's mouth, pondering upon how he came down to the point of sharing an apple with a donkey, when suddenly someone bumped into his back. He turned around to see a girl. Although she bumped into him, she didn't acknowledge him at all. Her eyes were dull, and she had a smile on her face, staring into the distance without blinking. Wei Wuxian followed her gaze and saw the dense mountain top of Dafan Mountain. All of a sudden, the girl started dancing in front of him without saying anything. The dance was wild, her arms flinging about savagely. Wei Wuxian was watching the performance with keen pleasure when a woman ran over, lifting her dress slightly. She embraced the girl and cried, "Ayan, let's go back, let's go back!" Ayan brushed her off with force, her smile still unfaded, creating a terrifying sort of affection, and continued to dance. The woman had to chase her down the street sobbing while running. A street vendor on the side spoke. "How awful. Ayan from Blacksmith Zhang's family has escaped again. It must be horrible for her mom, Ayan's husband, and her husband. All of them were." Wei Wuxian wandered around, piecing together the strange event that had happened here from picking up on different people's conversations. On Dafan Mountain, there was a burial ground. Most of the ancestors of the townspeople were from Buddha's feet buried here, and sometimes unidentified corpses were also received a spot and a wooden plaque here. A few months ago, in a dark, stormy night, the wind and the rain caused a piece of land on Dafan Mountain to slide and collapse, which happened to be the burial ground. Many older graves were destroyed, and a few coffins were exposed to the air and struck by lightning, causing both the corpses and the coffins to be charred black. The townspeople of Buddha's feet were extremely uneasy. After a few rounds of prayers, they rebuilt the burial grounds again, assuming that everything would be just fine. However, since then, the people in the town started to lose their souls. The first one to death, but luckily was safe. The peculiar thing was that after a few days, he suddenly married someone. His wedding was quite large, and he said that he wanted to be charitable from now on and settle down. On the night of the wedding, he was completely drunken, having never woken up since he lay on the bed. The bride didn't receive an answer as she called him. Only when she pushed him over did she realize that the groom had dreary eyes and a cold body. Aside from being able to breathe, he was no different from a dead person. After a few days of lying on the bed, not eating or drinking anything, he was finally buried. Unfortunately, the bride had become a widow shortly after she married. The second one was Ayan, from Blacksmith Zhang's family. The young girl had just received an engagement when her future husband was killed by a wolf on the second day, while she was hunting in the mount. While he was hunting in the mountains. After she got the news, she also became like the sluggard. Luckily, after some time, her soul-losing disease was cured on its own. However, after this, she went crazy, cheerfully dancing to the other people when she was outside. The third one was Ayan's father, Blacksmith Zhang. Until now, this had happened to 7 people. Considering the situation, and figured that it was most likely a soul-consuming spirit, not a soul-consuming beast. Although only one word was different between the two, they were completely different beings. A spirit was a ghost, while a beast was a monster. To him, it was likely that the landslide had destroyed an ancient tomb, and with lightning splitting the coffin open, a resting spirit had been let out. If he looked at the type of coffin and the presence of any seals on it, he could figure out whether or not this was the case. However, the townsfolk of Buddha's feet had already buried the charred coffins somewhere else and laid the corpses to rest again, which meant that there wouldn't be a great deal of evidence left. To go up the mountain, one had to hike up the trail that started in town. Wei Wuxian sat on his donkey and rode up the hill slowly. After a while, a few people walked down with ominous expressions on their faces. Some of them had scars on their faces, and they were talking all at once. With the darkening sky, they jumped as they saw a person who looked like a hanged ghost approaching them. After cursing, they walked around him quickly. Wei Wuxian turned his head and thought maybe they were frustrated because it was a strong prey, and he didn't think too much about it and slapped the donkey's buttocks, making it jog faster up the mountain. Coincidentally, he missed the group's whining, which happened shortly after. "I haven't seen anyone like this. Would the leader of a big clan like that need to fight over a soul-consuming spirit with us? He probably killed tons of them when he was young. What can we do? He's a sect leader, no matter which clan you choose to offend. You shouldn't offend the Zhang clan, and no matter which person you choose to offend, you shouldn't offend Zhang Chang. Let's just pack up and leave and feel sorry for ourselves. Winged evil compass. That's interesting. Oh, Jesus. Tired. But, like, not really tired. I need a moment to catch my breath. How's everyone in the chat doing? I am confused about checking who's actually here.
I wonder what this link could possibly lead me to.
It doesn't really matter if there are skipped frames while streaming this, so... Nice. That's all doing well. That's nice. Cat. Cat video. Oh wait, this is the person I was thinking of. They're Brazilian. Your username reminded me of this Brazilian cosplayer. I know quite a few Brazilian people now. I've never met... No, that's not true. I'm sure I've known Brazilian people before, but, like, I have, like, a good handful of Brazilian people I know now. I think that's interesting. Hello? Why am I'm getting messages. Oh. Ah. Okay. Let me see what I got. What did I have? Oh, that turned out a blurry. Oh, that turned out a blurry too. I'll respond to that later, I guess. Yeah, how we doing? Okay, now it says there's 2 people here. I wish it was easier for me to check who's here. Like, I want to know. I wanna know who's here. Like, I'm not famous, so it's not like there's thousands of people. There's like 2 people. That's it. I wanna know who they are. um, and it's like never even accurate. So I don't even know what's going on. Oh, that felt weird. All right. I know, it's so bad. Okay. Okay, Stream Manager, open. Yeah, put you on blast. Spotify, open. Anyways, whew. Okay, I feel like my voice is getting quieter, so I should turn the music down a little. A bit more. Stop being frozen. Ugh. I don't know if it. It's working. Screw it. Actually, you know what? I'll try and lower the music this way. I think this will be a little less broken. Or maybe it's equally broken. I don't know. I just turned down as much as I can be. Okay. That's probably good, I think. I don't know. I just want it to be soft background noise and be positive that it isn't drowning me out because I feel like my voice is getting quieter. Okay, back into it. If it was darker, then one would need a torch to move freely about in the mountain's forest. Wei Wuxian walked for a while, but he didn't meet many cultivators. He was quite surprised. Is it possible that half of the clans who came here to Buddha's feet arguing and talking empty words, while the other half could only come back defeated, like the group of people who just passed by? Suddenly, cries for help came from in front of him. Is anyone there? Help us! Both male and female voices could be heard, and all sounded panicked. Probably not fate. Cries for help from desolate mountains were usually the work of evil creatures to lure ignorant people into traps. Yet, Wei Wuxian was extremely happy. The eviler the creature was, the better it was for him. He directed the donkey toward the direction of the voices, but he couldn't find anything around him. As he looked upward, instead of spirits or monsters, it was the rural clan that he had met by the field earlier on, hung on the trees by a huge golden web. The middle-aged man was originally patrolling and scouting the forest with a few others. However, rather than meeting the prey that they had hoped for, they stepped into a net trap, probably set up by some wealthy clan, which was why they were hanging on the trees, complaining and calling for help. After seeing that someone approached, they immediately brightened up, but the hope faded as they saw that it was a lunatic who came. Although the threads of the deity binding net were thin, the material was fine in quality, making them difficult to break. No matter human, god, demon, spirit, or monster, it would take a long while for the intruder to struggle out since it could only be broken by a superior magical tool. The lunatic probably didn't even know what it was, much less how to get them out of it. He was about to call others for help when the crisp sounds of parting branches and stepping on leaves approached. A boy wearing light-colored robes emerged from the dark forest. The boy had a vermilion mark in between his eyebrows. His features delicate yet sharp. He was quite young, and around the same age as Lan Shizhui. Not really. Still in his adolescence, he carried a bamboo canister of feathered arrows and a luminous sword on his back. Holding a long bow in his hand, the embroidery on his clothes was extremely delicate, forming a magnificent white peony in front of his chest. The golden threads glistened against the dark nighttime shades surrounding him. Wei Wuxian silently exclaimed, "How wealthy!" This must have been a young master studying in Lanling Jing sect, since the sect was the only one with a white peony as the clan pattern, using the king of all flowers to suggest that they were the king of all cultivators. The vermilion mark implied the meaning of opening doors toward wisdom and aspiration, illuminating the world with the vermilion light. The young master already had an arrow on his bow and was preparing to shoot when he realized that the deity binding nets only caught humans. After an initial moment of disappointment, he quickly became annoyed. "I find you idiots every single time. There are more than 400 deity binding nets in this mountain, but you guys have already broken 10 or so, and I haven't seen the prey yet." Wei Wuxian thought again. How wealthy! A single deity binding net was already expensive, yet he had set up 400 all at once. A smaller clan would have gone bankrupt after buying this many, but then of course this was Lanling Jin sect. However, wasting deity binding webs like this and not caring about what they caught shouldn't be considered net hunting at all. In fact, it's almost as if they were chasing people away, not allowing the others a chance of contributing to the process. It seemed that the cultivators who retreated earlier didn't do so because the prey was difficult, but rather because this sect was one that shouldn't be angered. After a few days of traveling slowly and listening to the intriguing conversations at Buddha's feet, Wei Wuxian gathered a lot of information about the changes to the cultivation world. As the final winner of the 300-year-long cultivational disruption, the Lanling Jin sect was the head of all clans and sects. Its leader was even referred to as the commander of all cultivators. Even before this, the Jin clan was arrogant, admirers of extravagant splendor. After the years of being at the top, and while strengthening the sect, it had all trained all of its disciples to do whatever they wanted to. Even a slightly weaker clan would have to submit to their humiliation, much less a small rural clan such as this one. This was why, although people trapped in the nets were red with fury because of the mean words of the boy, they could not talk back. The middle-aged man spoke with tolerance. "Please, young master, do us a small favor and let us down." The boy was restless with anxiety, his prey still not arriving, and it was convenient for him to direct his anger towards the country bumpkins. He crossed his arms. "You guys should just stay in here, in case you mess around and get in my way again. I'll get you down after I catch the spirit-consuming beast. That is, if I still remember you." If they really stayed there on the trees for the whole night, and happened to bump into the creature that hunted Dafan Mountain, being unable to move, all they would be able to do is wait for their souls to be sucked dry. The round-faced girl who gave an apple to Wei Wuxian felt scared and started crying. Wei Wuxian was originally cross-legged on the donkey, but as it heard the sob, its long ears quivered and suddenly leaped forward. Following the leap came a long bray. If not for how horrible the bray sounded, its unstoppable vigor could almost pass for a purebred horse. Unprepared for this, Wei Wuxian was thrown off of its back, and almost injured his head as he fell. The donkey ran headfirst toward the boy, as if it did not believe that it could knock him off his feet with its head. The boy's arrow was still poised on the bow, conveniently drawing the bow toward its direction. Wei Wuxian didn't want to find a new mount so soon, so he quickly yanked on its reins. The boy took a look at him, a look of shock to suddenly appear on his face. After a second, the shock turned into disdain and his mouth twitched. "So it's you!" The tone was made of 20% surprise and 80% disgust, making Wei Wuxian blink. The boy spoke again. "Did you lose your marbles after you were thrown back to your village? How could they let you outside when you look as freaky as this?" Did he really just hear something of such significance? Might it be, Wei Wuxian suddenly realized, that Mo Jianyu's father isn't the head of some small sect, but the famous Jin Guangshan? Jin Guangshan was the last leader of Lanling Jing's sect, having already passed away. On the topic of this man, one sentence could not tell the whole story. He had a fierce wife from a prominent family and, in fact, was known for being scared of her. However, even if he was scared, it never stopped him from going to other women, no matter how fierce Madame Jean was. It was impossible for her to follow him 24 hours a day. Therefore, from ladies of distinguished statuses to prostitutes in rural areas, if he could get his hands on one, he wouldn't miss the chance. And, although he enjoyed casual relationships and flirted everywhere, having an uncountable amount of illegitimate children, it was extremely easy for him to get bored. After he grew tired of a woman, he would forget about her completely without any responsibility or whatsoever. Among all of his illegitimate children, there was only one who proved to be exceptionally talented and ended up being taken back, the current leader of the Lanling Jin sect, Jin Guangyao. Moreover, Jin Guangshao didn't die honorably either. He believed that he was old but vigorous and wanted to challenge himself, fooling around with a group of women. However, unfortunately, he failed and passed away during the act. This was too humiliating, and so Lanling Jin's sect told the public that the old leader had died from overworking himself. All of the other clans decided to keep silent about the matter and pretend they didn't know anything. Anyways, those were the real reasons behind his fame. How does he know this? How does Wei Wuxian know this? Because this should have happened when he was dead. I'm pretty sure. So how does he know? Did he just wander as a ghost collecting gossip? People trying to call his spirit, please talk to me. He's like, no, I gotta get the tea. What? I don't know. Let's see here. I need to take a fucking sip, babes. Okay. During the siege in Luanzhang Hill, aside from Zhang Cheng, Jin Guangshan was the second greatest contributor. And now Wei Wuxian had taken over the body of his own illegitimate son. He really didn't know if they were even with each other. Seeing that he was spacing out, the boy grew even more annoyed. Get out of here! It's disgusting just looking at you! What? I'm pretty sure that used to say cut sleeve, and they replaced it just saying gay. You damn gay? That doesn't even... It would sound better if they said cut sleeve, or even homosexual. You damn homosexual. I don't... Anyways. In terms of his generation, it was highly possible for Mo Jianyu to be an elder to the boy, maybe an uncle. After being humiliated by a junior like this, Wei Wuxian thought that, even if not for his own sake, he needed to return the humiliation for Mo Jianyu's body. What an attitude. I suppose that you didn't have a mother to teach you. Hearing his words, two raging flames sparked in the boy's eyes. He unsheathed the sword on his back and threatened, What did you say? The blade of the sword shone a golden light. It was a rare sword of high quality. Most clans probably couldn't get a small piece of it, even if they spent their whole lives saving for it. Wei Wuxian examined it attentively, somehow thinking that the sword seemed familiar to him. Then again, he had seen his share of gold top-notch swords. He didn't think too much about it and began to spin a tiny cloth bag that he held in his hand. It was a makeshift spirit locking bag that he had created a few days ago using the scraps and pieces of things. As the boy wielded the sword and came toward him, he fished a piece of human-shaped paper out of the spirit locking bag. He shifted to the side, avoided the attack, and slapped the paper on the back of his opponent. The boy's movements were already fast, but Wei Wuxian had done a lot of tripping someone while slapping a talisman onto their back, which meant that he was faster. The boy suddenly felt his torso become numb, and his back weakening, and then unwillingly clapped to the ground, with his sword also falling to the side with a clunk. He couldn't get up no matter how hard he tried, as if a mountain was on top of him. On his back there was a ghost who had died from gluttony, crushing him to the point that he couldn't even breathe. Although the ghost was weak, it was completely capable of dealing with brats like this one. Wei Wuxian picked up his sword, weighed it in his hands, and swung toward the direction of the deity binding net, splitting it in half. The family fell to the ground in an awkward way, but they sprinted off without saying anything. The round-faced girl seemed as if she wanted to thank him, but was pulled away by an elder who was scared that young Master Jin would hate them even more. The boy was on the ground fuming. You damn gay! Good for you, taking this sort of wrong path, because you didn't have enough spiritual powers to do anything. Watch out for your life. Do you know who came today? Although the cultivation method that he used in the past was often criticized, and, in the long term, it harmed the cultivator's health, it could be mastered quickly, and it was also especially attractive because there were no limitations as to the cultivator's spiritual powers or talent, making it so that there were always people who secretly practiced it to find a shortcut. The boy presumed that, after being chased from the Lanling Jin sect, Mo Jianyu had chosen the dishonorable path, which was a reasonable conclusion to draw, saving Wei Wuxian from a lot of unnecessary trouble. The boy pushed on the ground but couldn't get up, even after a few tries. His face was scarlet, and he gritted his teeth. If you don't stop, I'm going to tell my uncle, and you're going to wait for your death. Wei Wuxian wondered, why is it your uncle, not your dad? Who's your uncle again? Suddenly, a voice suddenly came from behind him, a mixture of bitter and cold. I'm his uncle. Do you have any last words? Hearing the voice, all the blood from Wei Wuxian's body traveled to his head and drained away in a moment later. The good thing was that his face was already a pile of white. A shade whiter wouldn't make too much of a difference. A violet-clothed youth. Why is he being called a youth? Man's 35. A violet-clothed youth approached in confident steps, his Jianzhu robe flowing smoothly in his hand pressing on the hilt of his sword. A silver bell hung by his waist, although it made no sound as he walked. The young man had thin eyebrows and almond eyes. His features were handsome in a sharp way, and his eyes held a composed vigor, with a slight intention of attack, appearing to be the two bolts of lightning as he stared. He stood 10 steps away from Wei Wuxian. His expression resembled a honed arrow to the bow, ready to be released at any moment. Even his posture emitted an air of arrogance and overconfidence. He frowned. Jinling, why did you linger for so long? Do you really need me to come and pick you up? Look what a terrible situation you're in now. Get up! After the initial numbing of his head, Wei Wuxian quickly realized what was going on. He curled a finger inside his sleeve and made the piece of paper retreat. Jinling held his back light and immediately rolled up, grabbing his sword in the process. He shifted near Jiang Chang and pointed at Wei Wuxian accusingly. I'm gonna break your legs! With the her uncle and nephew standing beside each other, it was clear that they shared a close resemblance, probably able to pass for brothers. Jiang Chang moved his finger, and the paper doll swiftly flew out of Wei Wuxian's hand and into his own. After taking one look at it, hostility came over his face. He pressed his fingers, and the paper was ignited, burning to dust with the screams of dark spirits. Jiang Chang spoke grimly. Break his legs. Haven't I told you? If you see this sort of evil and crooked practice, kill the cultivator and feed him to your dogs. Wei Wuxian couldn't even attempt to grab his donkey, backing away at rapid speed. He thought that after so many years, no matter how much hatred Jiang Chang held for him, it would have disappeared long ago. He didn't expect that. Not only did it not disappear, it became richer, as if it was a jar of aged alcohol. At the present time, his hatred had grown to affect even people who cultivated like him. With someone backing him up, Jinling's attacks became more aggressive. Wei Wuxian slid 2 fingers into the spirit-locking bag, about to take something out, when suddenly the blue glare of a sword slashed out like lightning. It collided with Jinling's sword, breaking the powerful sword's golden arrays in an instant. It wasn't because of the quality of the swords, but rather the great disparity in the strengths of the persons using the sword. Wei Wuxian had originally calculated the timing, but his movements were suddenly interrupted by the sword's glare, causing him to trip. He fell toward the ground, right on top of a pair of snow-white boots. After pausing for a moment, he slowly lifted his head. What first came into his sight was a long, slender blade, crystalline and translucent, as if it was made of ice. In the cultivation world, the sword was one of the most famous ones. Wei Wuxian had experienced its powers countless times, including both battles fight beside it and against it. The hilt of the sword was forged from pure silver that had been refined with secret techniques. The blade of the sword was extremely thin, almost transparent, sending the cold breaths of ice and snow. However, at the same time, it could cut through iron like cutting through mud. This was why, although the sword looked light, as if it could fly away at any instant, it was actually quite heavy, unable to be wielded by the average person. Its name was Bishen. The blade turned, and the clank of the sword being inserted back into the scabbard sounded from above. Wei Wuxian, at the same time, Jiang Qing's voice came from far. And I was wondering who it was. So was you, second young Master Lan. The pair of white boobs passed around boots. Did I say boobs? Boots passed around Wei Wuxian and calmly walked 3 steps forward. Wei Wuxian raised his head and got up. As he walked past the former, slightly brushing their shoulders, he made eye contact with him for a short moment, pretending that it was unintentional. He had an aura of smooth moonlight. The 7-stringed zither that he carried on his back was narrower than most. Its body was black, made using wood of a soft color. The man wore a forehead ribbon with cloud patterns. His skin was fair, features both refined and elegant, as if he was a piece of polished jade. The color of his eyes was especially light, like they were made of colored glass, causing his gaze to be overly distant. His expression held the traces of frost and snow, stern to the degree of being stiff, unwavering, even as he saw Wei Wuxian's ridiculous face. There wasn't a single speck of dust or wrinkled spot on him, from his head to his feet. It was impossible to find any fault with his appearance. Even so, 2 capitalized words jumped into Wei Wuxian's mind. Mourning clothes. Mourning clothes indeed. Although all of the clans in the cultivation world use extravagant words to describe Wu Sulan's sect uniform as the best-looking uniform, and Lan Wangji as an incomparable beauty who only appeared once in a blue moon, nothing could help the bitter facial expression that made him look as though his wife had passed away. Oh my god. That's a good point. It might have been in Mo Jianyu's journal. I just saw that. Looks as if his wife has passed away. Darn. Wonder why he looks like that. In an unlucky year, enemies would often find their paths to cross. Good news always traveled alone, but one disaster always followed the next. Thus, this situation right now. Lan Wangji was silent, staring straight ahead, standing motionlessly in front of Zhang Cheng. Zhang Cheng was already exceptionally handsome, but as they stood face to face with each other, he still seemed a few degrees inferior. He raised one brow and spoke. Han Guangjun, you sure live up to your reputation of being wherever the chaos is. So, you had time to come to this remote area today? Powerful cultivators from prominent clans usually didn't care to pay attention to low-level praise. However, Lan Wangji was an exception. He never cared for the prey of a night hunt, and wouldn't refuse to go just because the creature was not threatened enough to increase his fame. If anyone wanted help, he would be there. He had been like this ever since he was young. Being wherever the chaos is was the comment that the public gave him for his night hunts, and also praise for his moral character. Right now, Zhang Chang really didn't seem too polite as he said the words in such a tone. Even the juniors who came following Lan Wangji didn't seem comfortable hearing it. Lan Jingyi spoke straightforward. Isn't Sect Leader Zhang here as well? Zhang Chang replied grimly. You really think that you should butt in when your seniors are conversing? The Gusulan sect has always been known for its respectful conduct. Is this really how it teaches its disciples? Lan Wangji seemed as if he didn't want to engage in conversation, throwing Lan Shizhui a look. The latter understood and told the juniors to speak among themselves. Afterward, he spoke to Jinling. Young Master Jin, night hunts have always been fair competition among the different clans and sects. However, is that supposed to shoot? Wait, who's speaking? That's too many words to be Lan Wangji, isn't it? Young Master Jin, night hunts have always been fair competitions amongst the different clans and sects. However, to set up, I think it's Lan Wangji's talking. I'm not sure. However, to set up nights all over Dafan Mountain is clearly hindering the cultivators, causing them to fall into traps. Is this or is this not against the rules of night hunting? Jinling's grim expression was exactly the same as his uncle's. What can I do? It was their fault for stepping into the traps. I'll solve everything after I finish capturing the prey. Lan Wangji frowned. Jinling was about to speak again, but he suddenly realized that, shockingly, he could neither open his mouth nor make any sounds. Seeing that Jinling's upper and lower lips became inseparable as they were glued together, anger appeared in Zhang Chang's face. The sloppy manners that he upheld before were all gotten rid of. You with the Lan surname, what do you mean by this? It's not your turn to discipline Jinling yet, so release the spell now. The silent spell was used by the Lan sect to reprimand its disciples. Wei Wuxian had suffered a ton from this little trick, although it wasn't anything too complicated or obscure. Only the people of the Lan clan could release the spell. If one wanted to forcibly speak, it would result in either their lips being ripped bloody or a hoarse throat for a couple of days. The only solution was to stay silent and reflect upon the wrongdoings until the time limit of the punishment was over. Lan Shizhui spoke. Sect Leader Zhang, there's no need for anger. As long as he does not break the spell forcefully, it should release on its own after 30 minutes. Before Zhang Chang opened his mouth to speak, a purple-clothed man in Zhang's sect uniform ran toward them within the forest. He shouted, Sect Leader! However, after seeing Lan Wangji's presence, he hesitated. Zhang Chang spoke satirically. Talk! Is there more bad news? The man spoke in a low voice. Not long ago, a blue sword flew over and destroyed the deity binding nets that you'd set up. Zhang Chang glanced at Lan Wangji harshly. His displeasure plastered all over his face. How many were broken? The man replied carefully. All of them. That's more than 400. Zhang Chang seethed with anger. He didn't expect the journey to be this unlucky. Originally, he came to help Jinling out. Jinling would be turning 15 this year. That really... That's confusing. Then... Jinling was like 2? Or he was already like a year old when... Wait. Was that for... Hang on, I'm trying to figure out things about the timeline. Was Wei Wuxian invited to his first birthday? Is that what it was? I don't know. Man. Okay. That must be what it is, I guess. Because otherwise, what? Although 400 deity binding... Wait. Okay. Jinling would be turning 15 this year, the age of which he should already be making his debut and starting to compete with the juniors of other clans. Zhang Cheng considered the decision carefully before choosing to compete with the juniors of the other clans. Zhang Cheng considered the decision carefully before choosing Dafan Mountain as the location of the hunt. He also set up nets everywhere and threatened the cultivators of other clans, showing them the consequences so that they would retreat, in order to let Jinling take the top prize without anyone fighting against him. Although 400 deity binding nets were a whopping price, it wasn't too much for the Yunmeng Zhang sect. Nonetheless, losing the nets were a small matter, but losing face was not. With Lan Wangji's actions, Zhang Cheng felt a whirlpool of anger at the bottom of his heart, rising higher by every second. He narrowed his eyes and his left hand casually stroking the ring on his right hand index finger. This was a dangerous sign. Everyone knew that the ring was a menacing, strong magical weapon. Whenever clan leader Zhang started touching it, it meant that he had the intent to kill. Yup. Please do not pronounce it like bitchin'. Yeah. I know how to pronounce bishin. I'm good. I know it's not bitchin'. Oof. Been reading for like 2 hours now. I have 1 or 2 chapters more that I want to get through. I want to reach the flashback when I stop. That's my goal. However, after stroking it for a while, Zhang Chang compelled himself to restrain his hostility. Although he was displeased as the leader of a sect, he needed to take more things into consideration, which meant that he couldn't be as impulsive as Jinling. After all, the fall of Qinghe sect, among the other 3 great sects, the Lanling Jin sect and the Gusulan sect, were quite close due to the personal relationship between the 2 leaders. By leading the Yunmeng Jiang sect alone, he was already in an isolated situation among the 3. Han Guangjun, or Lan Wangji, was quite a prestigious cultivator, while his elder brother Zewu Jun, or Lan Zichen, was the leader of the Gusulan sect. The 2 brothers had always been on good terms with each other. It was best not to openly dispute with Lan Wangji. Also, Zhang Chang's sword, Sandu, had never made actual contact with Lan Wangji's sword, Bishen, and it was not yet decidable whose hands would the deer die on. Although he owned the powerful ring Zidian, a family heirloom of his Lan Wangji's zither, Wangji, clever, there it is, was also known for its abilities. The thing that Zhang Cheng hated the most was to be disadvantageous during a fight. Without complete confidence in his success, he would not consider fighting with Lan Wangji. Zhang Cheng slowly took away his left hand, ceasing to stroke his ring. It seemed as if Lan Wangji was determined to take part in this matter, so it wouldn't help if he continued to play the antagonist. Zhang Cheng made the decision to, for the time being, owe him a favor, and turned around to see Jinling still covering his mouth angrily. Han Guangjun wants to punish you, so just let him do it for this one time. It's not easy for him either to discipline juniors from other clans. His tone was sarcastic, but it wasn't clear who he was mocking. Lan Wangji never fought to win his way with words, and looked as if he didn't hear anything. Zhang Cheng turned again, his words covered with thorns. Why are you still standing here, waiting for the prey to come and throw itself onto your sword? If today you don't catch the creature hunting Dafan Mountain, don't ever come to me again. Jinling threw Wei Wuxian a tough look, but was too scared to look at Lan Wangji, the person who had silenced him. He put his sword back into its scabbard, saluted the two seniors, and retreated with the bow in his hand. Lan Shishui spoke. Sect Leader Zhang, the Gosu Lan sect will return the exact number of spirit bonding nets that have been destroyed. Zhang Cheng sneered. No need. He chose the opposite direction and walked down calmly, the man who had come from the forest following behind him, pulling a long face because he knew that it'd be impossible to escape a lecture when he returned. After their figures disappeared, Lan Jingyi spoke. How could the sect leader Zhang act like this? Only afterward did he remember that Lan's clan's rules of not talking behind others' backs. He looked meekly at Han Guangjun and shut his mouth. Lan Shishui smiled softly towards Wei Wuxian. Young Master Mo, we meet again. Wei Wuxian pulled the corners of his mouth. Lan Wangji spoke again. Do your tasks. The command was simplistic and clear, without any fancy vocabulary for decoration. The juniors finally remembered the reason behind why they came to Dafan Mountain. They gathered their thoughts and respectfully waited for further instructions. After a moment, Lan Wangji spoke again. Do what you can. Don't force anything. The voice was deep and alluring. If one was too near, the tip of their heart would tremble. Okay. The juniors replied mannerly, afraid to linger for too long, and walked into the depths of the forest. Wei Wuxian thought that, undeniably, Zhang Cheng and Lan Zhan were extremely different from each other. Even their advice for juniors were complete opposite. While thinking, he suddenly saw Lan Wangji give an almost unnoticeable nod to him. He was quite surprised. Ever since a young age, Lan Wangji had been so prim and proper that it was painful to watch. He had always been solemn and stiff, as if he had never been lively before. He couldn't let a single grain of sand appear in his eyes, which was why he had never approved of Wei Wuxian cultivating the dark path. Lan Shishui had probably informed Lan Wangji of his suspicious behavior in Mo Village already. Even so, he had nodded in acknowledgement and thanking him for helping out the juniors from the Lan sect. Without thinking, Wei Wuxian immediately returned a salute when he looked up again. Lan Wangji had already disappeared. After pausing for a second, he turned around to travel down the mountain. No matter what prey hunted Dafan Mountain, he wouldn't take it. Wei Wuxian could fight for it or against it without anyone except Jinling. Why did it turn out to be Jinling? With so many disciples in the Jin sect, he really didn't expect that the person he met happened to be Jinling. If he knew, he definitely wouldn't mock Jinling for having no mother to teach him. If someone else had said the same words to Jinling, he would teach them about what it means to bring misfortune upon oneself with careless talk. Yet, the person who had said so turned out to be himself. After standing still for a moment, Wei Wuxian raised a hand and gave himself a slap on the face. The slap was both loud and hard, causing his right cheek to sting. Suddenly, shuffling sounds came from a thicket on the side, and Wei Wuxian saw a donkey emerge from within. He dropped his hand, and the donkey actually approached on its own. Unlike the other times, Wei Wuxian pulled on its long ears and forced a smile. "You wanted to save the damsel in distress, but asked me to be the hero to the rescue." The donkey whined, just as a wave of cultivators approached from the bottom of the hill. After the 400 or so spirit-binding nets were destroyed by Lan Wangji's sword, the hesitant cultivators and Buddhist feet all rushed up again. Everyone here was probably Jinling's opponent. Wei Wuxian considered for a moment about whether or not to make them retreat again with force, but, after thinking about it, he ended up silently walking out of the way, letting them pass. The disciples from different sects wore different colored uniform, complained as they walked. Both in the Jin sect and Zhang sect spoil young Master Jin too much. He's still so young, but he's already this arrogant and rude. If they let him have the Lanling Jin sect, who knows what chaos would happen. I don't think we'd even survive. Wei Wuxian slowed his pace. A soft-hearted female cultivator sighed. How can they not spoil him? He lost both his parents at such a young age. Shime, that's not how it works. So what if both his parents died? There are a ton who lost both their parents. If everyone acted like him, then what would happen? I'm surprised that Wei Wuxian was cruel enough to harm her. Jinling's mother was Jiang Cheng's elder sister from birth, the Shiji who brought him up. It really was too bad for Zhang Yanli, bringing up a wolf that bites the owner's hands. Jin Zixuan had it even worse. But just because he had something to do with Wei Wuxian, he ended up like that. Why does Wei Wuxian have something to do with everyone? Indeed. Have you heard him being close with anyone other than the mad dogs that he raised? His enemies were everywhere, and he did wrong to everyone. Even with Han Guangjun, they were like fire and water, hating each other. Speaking of it, today, if it wasn't for Han Guangjun... After walking for a while, the gurgling sounds of a running stream came to Wei Wuxian's ears. He didn't hear this when he came up. Wei Wuxian finally realized that he walked the wrong path down the mountain and onto another one that forked off. What? Oh, silent for a while, and then that music just popped up. Hang on. Please, give me a long video. Yeah, sure, this one. I need it as background music. Okay. Please. Okay, there it is. Where was I? Holding the reins of the donkey, he stood beside the running water. The moon could be seen high in the sky, with no branches or leaves on the banks of the stream. Fragments of the white reflected over the surface in the reflection. Wei Wuxian saw a face ever-changing from the flow of the water. He slammed his palm into the water, dissolving the ridiculous features. He lifted his dripping wet palms and wiped away the powder on his face. A handsome, graceful youth appeared in the reflections of the water. He looked as pure as if he had been cleansed by moonlight, with smooth brows, bright eyes, and lips curving slightly upwards. Yet, as he lowered his head to stare at himself, the drops of water hanging off of his lashes rolled off, as if they were drops of tears. It was a young and unfamiliar face, not the yearling patriarch who had overturned the world and killed thousands, Wei Wuxian. After taking a few more looks at his face, Wei Wuxian wiped his face again and rubbed his eyes. He sat behind the stream with a thud. It wasn't as if he couldn't withstand the words of attack. After all, when he made the decision, he fully understood the situations that he had to face. Ever since then, he had reminded himself of the Yunmeng Jing sect motto, do it even if it was impossible. However, although he thought that his heart was like stone, in the end he was still human, not some emotionless grass or plant. The donkey seemed as if it knew that he wasn't in a great mood, and for once wasn't being loud out of impatience. A moment of silence passed, and it turned around to leave. Wei Wuxian sat by the stream, still not responding at all. It turned to look around, throwing its hooves to the ground, but Wei Wuxian still paid no attention to it. The donkey had come back sulkily, biting and tugging on the corner of Wei Wuxian's collar. He could choose to go, and he could choose to not go. Seeing that the donkey had went as far as to use his mouth, Wei Wuxian decided to follow him. The donkey took him to a few trees and circled around an area of grass. In the grass, there lay a qiankun bag with a ragged golden net hanging above it. It probably fell off as an unlucky cultivator struggled their way out. Wei Wuxian picked up the bag and opened it. There were quite a few items in it, such as gourds of medicinal liquor, talismans, miniature demon-reflecting mirrors, and so on. He fished around for some time and happened to pull out a talisman. Immediately, a ball of fire appeared in his hand. The burning item was an gloom-burning talisman, which, like its name, used dark energy as fuel. It would burn automatically if it made contact with dark energy. The more energy there was, the stronger the flame. It lit up as soon as it was taken out, meaning that there was a spirit not far away from Wei Wuxian. Seeing the light of the fire, Wei Wuxian held it to detect the spirit's direction, watching attentively. When he turned to the east, the fire weakened. When he turned to the west, the fire suddenly intensified. He walked a few steps forward in the direction and saw a white, stooping figure appearing under a tree. The talisman had finished burning and the ashes fell from his fingertips. An old man was sitting with his back to him, speaking in faint murmurs. Wei Wuxian approached. The words that the old man murmured became clear. It hurts, it hurts. Wei Wuxian asked, where does it hurt? The old man answered, head, my head. Wei Wuxian replied, let me take a look at it. He walked a few steps to the side of the old man and saw a bloody, large hole on his forehead. This was a ghost, probably killed with a weapon which was smashed onto his head. He was dressed in a burial robe made with fine material and craftsmanship, meaning that he had already been coffined and buried properly. This wasn't the soul of a living human had lost. However, ghosts like this shouldn't have appeared on Dafan Mountain. Wei Wuxian did not find an explanation to this implausible scenario. Feeling quite worried, he jumped on the donkey's back, slapped it with a shout, and rode toward the direction where Jinling came up the mountain. Around the area of the ancient tombs, there were a lot of cultivators who wandered around in hope of a hare crashing into a tree trunk. Somebody dared to hold a spirit attraction flag, but only attracted a bunch of dark spirits who wept despairingly. Wei Wuxian pulled on the reins, scanned around, and asked in a loud, clear voice, "Excuse me, sorry for the interruption, but where did the young masters from the Jin clan and Lan clan go?" Sure enough, after washing his face, people actually acknowledged him. One cultivator answered, "They left here for the goddess temple." Goddess temple? The rural clan from back then had sneaked up the mountain again and joined a group of night hunters after hearing that all the deity binding nets were destroyed. The middle-aged man recognized his clothing and the grimacing donkey and realized that he was the lunatic who had saved them earlier. He felt quite awkward and pretended that nothing had happened. Nonetheless, the round-faced girl showed him the path. "Over there, it's a divine temple in a cave on the mountain." Wei Wuxian inquired again, "Which deity is the temple built for?" The round-faced girl spoke. I think it's a natural stone of a stone statue of a goddess." Wei Wuxian nodded. "Thank you." After it was 1 month. Oh. I assumed that it would have happened really soon after, so it's like kind of weird, you know? I don't know. The timeline's kind of confused. How could he be turning 15? Wei Wuxian was dead for 13 years. When Jinling shouldn't have been a year old yet. So he should be turning 14, I think. Or like maybe he just turned 14. I can accept if he just turned 14 and will turn 15 next. But confusing. I'm confusion. Because I expect all that happened relatively quickly. Of them being like, we gotta do something. Because they were basically planning the siege. They were planning the siege when shit went down. Like, they were planning on doing that, and then especially after that happened, they're like, we can't wait. So, like, you know, I'm pretty sure it happened quickly. So, I don't know. Maybe they took time between Jin Sijuan's death and having that meeting. But, I don't know. It's confusing. It's all very confusing. Oh, that's the end of the chapter. He ran towards the goddess temple. The sluggard's marriage, lightning that destroyed coffins, the fiancé eaten by wolves, the father and the daughter losing their souls, and the extravagant burial clothes. It was as if a string was being pulled through all the beads, tying everything into one perfect strand. No wonder the compasses of evil didn't pick anything up. The spirit attraction flags didn't work either. Everyone had underestimated the creature in Dafan Mountain. It wasn't what they thought it was at all. I just choose to read that differently. Stop! I hate seeing the word uke. I hate this. God, I hate yaoi terminology. Wangji, two Chinese characters of the Zillard's name. They are exactly the same as Lan Wangji's name. The term is a Taoist phrase that means to get rid of the heart of deceit. It usually refers to finding pleasure and tranquility, forgetting about material matters, and being at peace with the world. The name does indeed reflect Wangji's personality. That is, until the uke starts flirting with him. Stop! Don't use that word! Stop! Just call him a bottom! I hate it. I hate yaoi culture so much. Oh, God. Okay, that's all I care about for the special, the translator notes. Come on. There you go. Ah, okay. 22-minute read. Ooh. Is this gonna be the final chapter on this, though? Because that'd be nice. On the other hand, Lan Shizhui and the other disciples did not find anything in the area of the ancient tombs and had moved on to search inclusive in Goddess Temple. In Dafan Mountain, aside from the tombs of the Buddha's feet ancestors, there was also the Goddess Temple. The being of worship was neither Buddha nor Guanyin, but the statue of a dancing goddess. A few hundred years ago, a hunter from Buddhist feet ventured into the mountains and found an extraordinary stone in a cave. It was around 3 meters in height, formed naturally, and appeared strangely like a human, with 4 limbs making a dancing pose. The more peculiar thing was that human features could vaguely be seen on the statue, appearing to be that of a smiling lady. The townspeople of Buddha's feet were all astonished and thought that it was a magical stone formed by gathering the energy of heaven and earth, making up a series of legends about it. Some told the story of an immortal falling in love with the goddess of the 9 heavens, and carved a stone statue from the goddess's appearance to convey the hardships of being lovesick. After discovering this, the goddess was furious, so the unfinished statue had to be left alone. Others told the story of the Jade Emperor and his beloved daughter who died young. The emperor, longing for his daughter, had supposedly turned into this statue. Anyhow, there were all sorts of myths able to make anyone gawk. In the end, the townspeople themselves had also started to believe these legends, which came out of their own mouths. Hence, someone started to... I got lost mid-sentence. Had also started to believe in these legends, which came out of their own mouths. Hence, someone turned to the stone cave and into a temple, and the stone platform into a holy seat. The statue was named Dancing Goddess, and there were worshippers all year round. The inside of the cave was spacious, similar to the size of an Arjun temple. With the statue of the goddess set in the center, it was... At first sight, it did indeed look like a human. The maiden's waist could even be considered lithe and graceful. However, after taking a closer look at it, it would seem rougher than... Then again, a naturally formed statue being so similar to an actual human was enough to make most people gasp in awe. Lan Jingyi lifted and lowered the compass of evil, but its pointer still did not move. A thick layer of incense ashes covered the table for offerings, and disordered candles lay there as well. A sickly sweet scent came from the plates for holding fruits. Most of the people from the Gusulan sect had some degree of minor misophobia. He fanned at the air in front of his nose and spoke. The locals said that it is quite effective to pray at the goddess temple, but how can it be this ruined? They should at least come and clean once in a while. Lan Shizhui spoke. There have already been 7 people who have lost their souls. Everyone is saying that lightning let out a fierce creature from the ancient graves at Buddha's feet, so would anybody dare to come up the mountain? There's no attendance at the temple, and so, naturally, there's nobody to clean up the place. A disdainful voice came from outside the cave. It's only a stupid rock, given the title of a goddess by who knows who, and people dare put it here accepting incense and worship? Jinling came inside with his hands crossed behind his back. The time limit for the silence spell was not long, so his mouth could open already. However, nothing nice came out of that mouth of his as he looked at the goddess statue and humphed. These rural villagers don't work hard when they face difficulties, but instead pray to Buddha and other things every day. There are thousands and millions of people in the world, but gods and Buddhas are already hands full with their own matters, so who would care about them, let alone a powerless goddess without status like this one? If it really was that effective, then I'm gonna pray for the soul-consuming creature in Dafan Mountain to come and appear in front of me right now. Can the statue do it? You stupid. A few cultivators from smaller clans came in behind him, and everyone laughed right after hearing him, agreeing with his words. The originally quiet temple became bustling with noise after the group of people had rushed forth, and the space also seemed more cramped. Lan Shizhui silently took his head, turning around and glancing without aim. His gaze landed on the head of the goddess statue. The features of a compassionately smiling face could vaguely be seen. Yet, see, one second. This is an issue I have with, like, I don't know how the statue was. I should know how the statue. Wait, was the statue even in CQL? I feel like they omitted it. Because I've watched it enough to know that, I think. But the way that they depicted the statue in both the donghua and manhua, like, it looks a lot more deliberately like this is a person that someone carved out instead of being a rock that vaguely resembles a person. It's just supposed to be a rock that naturally, vaguely resembles a person. And they made it look too good. And that bothered me. I'm like, It doesn't have the same effect as being like, whoa, this is just a wild looking rock. Like, anyways, I think it would be more effective if they actually portrayed it properly. Where was I? Okay. Yet he felt a strange sense of familiarity towards the smile, as if he had seen it somewhere before this. Where on earth had he seen it before? Lan Shizui thought that it must be an important matter and couldn't help but approach the statue, wanting to examine the goddess's features carefully. At the same time, someone bumped into him. A cultivator who was originally standing behind him and had fallen down without any noise. The others were alert with surprise. Jinling spoke in a vigilant tone. What happened to him? Lan Shizui held his sword and bent down to examine it. There was nothing wrong with the cultivator's breathing, like he had just suddenly fallen asleep. Yet, no matter how hard he was pushed or called, he would not wake up. Lan Shizui stood up. He seems as if... Before he finished his sentence, the dark cave abruptly lit up. The cave was suddenly covered in a red light, as if a waterfall of blood was rolling off of its walls. The candles on the platform for offerings in corners of the cave had ignited on their own. With a few shings, everyone in the cave had either drawn their swords or taken out their talismans at the same time. A person suddenly burst in from outside the temple, holding a gourd of medicinal alcohol. He threw it towards the stone statue, and raging flames sprouted from it, illuminating the stone cave so that it could even pass for daytime. Wei Wuxian used up all the items he had found in the Qiankun bag. I should check how that's pronounced. He threw it away and shouted, "Everyone go back outside! Be cautious of the soul-consuming goddess on the inside!" Someone yelled in surprise. The goddess's pose had changed. Before, the statue clearly had one foot lifted and both of its arms raised upward, of which one was pointing directly at the sky, its form graceful. However, amid the crimson and yellow flames, it had lowered both of its arms and foot. There was no doubt. It definitely wasn't a mistake of the eye. In the next moment, the statue lifted one foot again and stepped out of the fire. Wei Wuxian shouted, "Run! Run! Slashing around won't hurt. It won't work." Most of the cultivators ignored him. The soul-consuming monster that they had tried so hard to find had finally appeared, so why would they miss out on the chance? However, even with so many swords and chopping and stabbing and so many talismans and magical tools being thrown at it, the statue's advance didn't stop at all. It was around 3 meters tall, resembling a titan as it moved, giving off a strong sense of oppression. It picked up 2 cultivators and lifted them in front of its face. The stone mouth seemed like it opened and closed, and the swords in the cultivators' hands dropped to the ground with 2 clanks. Their heads drooped, their souls were sucked away. With no attack methods working properly, the others were finally willing to listen to Wei Wuxian's words. Everyone gushed outside, scattering in all directions as fast as they could. With so many people and faces, the more anxious Wei Wuxian became, the longer it took to find Jinling. Wei Wuxian rode on the donkey and ran into a bamboo forest, encountering the juniors from the Lan clan as he turned around. Wei Wuxian called for them. "Children!" Lan Jingyi replied, "Who are your children? Do you know which sect we're from? Do you really think that you would be considered a senior just because you washed your face?" Wei Wuxian spoke. Okay, Gagas. Send a signal and get your clan's Han Guangjun up here." The juniors nodded a few times and ran while searching for signals. Lan Shizui spoke. The signal firelights were all used up during the night at Mo Village. Wei Wuxian was shocked. "You guys didn't restock afterwards?" The signal firelights were usually only needed once in over 800 years. Lan Shizui replied bashfully, "We forgot." Wei Wuxian tried to scare them. "Is this a matter that you should forget about? If Han Guangju knew about this, he's going to make you sorry." Lan Jingyi's face was pale with terror. "It's over. This time we're going to be punished. Death by Han Guangjun." Wei Wuxian. "Indeed, he should punish you. Without punishment, you won't remember the next time." Lan Shizui. Young Master Mo, how did you know that it was not a spirit-consuming spirit or beast, but the goddess statue instead? Wei Wuxian searched for Jinling as he ran. How did I know? I saw. Lan Jingyi also caught up, and they ran on one side of him. What did you see? We also saw lots of things. You saw. So what happens next? What things were in the area of the ancient tombs? What else could there be? There were only dead souls. Correct. There were dead souls. This is why it can't be a soul-consuming spirit or beast. It's simple. If it was either of those two, with so many dead spirits in the area, would it have chosen to not eat them? No, it wouldn't have. This time, there were more than one person who asked, why? What can I say about your Gusulan sect? Wei Wuxian could not tolerate anymore. Why can't you teach less annoying, lengthy nonsense like cultivational etiquette, family trees, and history which requires memorization, and teach more practical things? How is this hard to understand? Dead souls are a lot easier to absorb than living souls. The physical body of a living person is like a shield, and if it wants to eat a live soul, it would have to break the shield. For example, he looked at the donkey, which panted while running, rolling its eyes. For example, if an apple is put in front of you, and another one is put inside a locked box, which one would you choose to eat? Of course, it would be the one in front of you. This creature is only eating living souls. It knows a way to obtain them. It is both powerful and selective in terms of food. Oh, thanks. Lan Jingyi was astonished. So that's how it works? It makes a lot of sense. Wait, so you're not really a lunatic? Debatable. Lan Shizhui explained as he ran. We all thought that, because of the landslide and lightning led to the series of events, it must be a soul-consuming spirit. Wei Wuxian spoke. Wrong. What is wrong? The order and the correlation is wrong. Let me ask you, for the landslide and the soul-consuming events, which ones were first and second? The cause and effect. Lan Shizhui answered without thinking twice. The landslide was first, and the soul consumption was second. First was the cause, the latter was the effect. Wei Wuxian spoke. Completely wrong. The soul consumption was first, and the landslide was second. The soul consumption was the cause, and the landslide was the effect. During the night of the landslide, a storm suddenly started, and a streak of lightning broke a coffin. Remember this. This first person to lose their soul, the sluggard, was trapped in the mountains for the whole night, and married a few days later. Lan Jingyi asked, where is it wrong? Wei Wuxian replied, it's all wrong. Where would a good-for-nothing and penniless person obtain the money for such a grand wedding? The boys were rendered speechless, but it couldn't have been helped, since the Gusulan sect was a sect that did not need to worry about matters of wealth. Wei Wuxian spoke again. Did you take a look at all the dead souls floating in Dafan Mountain? There was an old man who died from a hit to the head wearing burial clothes that were made with very fine craftsmanship and fabric. With such extravagant burial clothes, his coffin wouldn't have been empty, and there must have been a few burial items to protect it. The coffin that was broken by the lightning was most likely his. Yet, the people who came to retrieve the corpse did not find any burial items, which meant that they were definitely taken away by the sluggard, explaining why he suddenly became rich. The sluggard suddenly decided to marry someone after the night of the landslide. So, something unusual must have happened during the night. On that evening, there was a harsh storm, and he took cover in the mountain. Where on Dafan Mountain is it possible to take cover from the rain? Goddess Temple. And, when most people go into a temple, there's one thing that they would do. Lan Shizhui asked, pray? That's right. For example, he would pray for himself to be lucky, to become wealthy, to have enough money to marry, and so on. The goddess fulfilled his wish with the lightning that split open the grave, letting him see the treasures in the coffin. His prayers came true, and, as the sacrifice, the goddess came to him on the evening of his marriage and took his soul away. Lan Jingyi, all of these are just your guesses, right, Wei Wuxian? Yes, they are guesses, but following this train of logic, all of the things that happened afterward can be explained. Lan Shizhui, how can this explain what happened with the girl? Great question. You guys probably asked around before you came up the mountain. Ayan had just gotten engaged during those days. All recently engaged girls will definitely have the same wish. Lan Jingyi was befuddled. What wish? Boy, don't you read romance novels? Anyways, Wei Wuxian replied, none other than something that goes like, I wish my husband would love me and care for me his whole life, attracted to only myself. The boys were at a loss. Would a wish like this really be able to be granted? Wei Wuxian held out his palms. It's simple. If her husband's whole life immediately ended, wouldn't it count as loving only one person for his own entire life? Lan Jingyi finally understood and shouted excitedly, "Oh! So the reason behind her husband being eaten by wolves the day after her engagement was that it was highly possible for Ayan to have been to the goddess temple to pray." Wei Wuxian struck while the iron was hot. Why is that hired as a translator's note? That's an English saying. Anyways. It was hard to say whether he was attacked by a wolf or something else. There was another factor that is unique to Ayan. Why is it that out of all of the victims, only Ayan's soul returned? How is she different from everyone else? The difference is that she is a relative who also lost his soul, or in other words, a relative who replaced her. Blacksmith Zhang is Ayan's father, especially one who loved his daughter. So, when he saw that his daughter lost her soul and there was no way to deal with it, what was the only thing that he could do? This time, Lan Shizhui was quick to reply. He could only entrust his hope to the heavens. Therefore, he went to the goddess temple to pray, the wish being, "I wish my daughter Ayan's soul could be found." Wei Wuxian spoke with appraise. This is why only Ayan's soul came back, and also the reason behind Blacksmith Zhang losing his soul. However, although Ayan's soul was given back, it was slightly fractured. After her soul returned, she had unconsciously started to imitate the goddess statue's dance and even its smile. The similarity of the people who lost their souls was that, most likely, they had prayed in front of the goddess statue. The prices to pay for their wishes were their souls. The goddess statue was originally just an average rock which happened to appear like a person. Having accepted a few hundred years' worth of worship without any reason, it gained some powers. Yet, because it was greedy and its thoughts ventured off the wrong path, it had wanted to quickly increase its powers by eating souls. These were souls that it obtained by means of swapping wishes, and could be considered as the voluntary sacrifice souls of the people who prayed. The two sides had a fair deal, one wish for another, and it seemed to be just and moral. This is why the pointers of the compasses of evil did not move, why the spirit attraction flags did not work, and why the powers of the swords and talismans were all nullified. The creature in Dafan Mountain wasn't any sprite, demon, ghost, or monster, but a goddess. This was an untitled goddess born from the 100 years of incense. Using the items to deal with evil spirits and beasts to deal with it would be like using fire to distinguish fire. Lan Jingyi shouted loudly, "Wait! Before this, in the temple, someone's soul was also taken away, but we didn't hear him wish." Wei Wuxian's heart suddenly jumped. He stopped in his footsteps. "Someone's soul was taken away in the temple? Describe to me everything that happened earlier without missing a single word." Lan Shizhui repeated the scenario both clearly and quickly. When he heard Jinling's talk of, "If it's really effective, then I'm going to pray for the soul-consuming creature in Dafaman to appear in front of me right now. Can the statue do it?" Wei Wuxian spoke. "How is this not wishing? It most definitely is a wish." The others agreed with Jinling, so it was accepted that they had all wished the same thing. At the time, the soul-consuming goddess was right in front of them, so the wish was granted. Then it was time to cease the sacrifice. Suddenly, the donkey halted and ran toward the opposite direction. Wei Wuxian was, again, swung off unprepared, but grabbed onto the rope no matter what. However, in the bushes in front of him, there came a noise of chewing, complete with crunches and slurps. An immense figure was crawling in the bush, its head on the ground, moving using its stomach. Hearing the ground, it immediately lifted its head. Their eyes met. In the beginning, the soul-consuming goddess's features were vague, and there were only shapes of eyes, nose, mouth, and ears on its face. But after it had eaten the souls of a few cultivators all at once, it could already form clear features, and it was the face of a smiling woman with blood dripping down the corners of its mouth, munching on an arm that had been torn off. Everyone, following the donkey, ran in the other direction. Lan Shizhui was breaking down. "That's not supposed to happen. The Yiling Patriarch had said before that high-level ones eat souls, and only low-level ones eat flesh." Wei Wuxian couldn't help but to comment, "Why are you blindly worshipping him? Even his own inventions were..." Wow, okay. Even his own inventions were a mess. No rules stay the same in all situations. You could think of it as an infant. When it lacks teeth, it can only eat congee and soup. But when it grows up, it would, of course, also want to eat meat using its teeth. Her powers have just risen greatly, so naturally she'd want to taste something new. The soul-consuming goddess stood up from the ground. Her body was tall. She used her arms and her legs to dance with uncontrollable excitement, seeming like she was extremely pleased. Out of the blue, an arrow came with a whoosh and pierced her forehead, the arrow appearing out of the back of her head. Hearing the sound of the bow's release, Wei Wuxian looked towards its direction. Jinling stood atop a tall hill, not far away, and already had his second feathered arrow in the bow. He pulled to the maximum, and another head-penetrating bow was released. the strength causing the soul-consuming goddess to stagger in a few steps backward. Lan Shizhui yelled, "Young Master Jin, send off the signal on you!" Jinling turned a deaf ear to his words, determined to kill the monster. With a solemn face, he set 3 arrows onto the bow at once. Although she was shot in the head twice, the soul-consuming goddess was not angered and advanced toward Jinling with the same smile plastered on her face. Although she danced while walking, her speed was terrifyingly fast, decreasing the distance between them by half in just a few moments. A few cultivators appeared from the side and fought with her, hindering her strides. Jinling shot each arrow as the goddess took each step, probably intending to use all of the feathered arrows first, before fighting in a close range with the soul-consuming goddess. His arm was quite steady, and his shots were accurate, but all magical weapons were useless against it. Both Zhang Chong and Lan Wangji were at Buddha's feet, waiting for any news, so who knows how long it would take for them to realize that there was something wrong and come up here. To extinguish fire, water was needed. Therefore, if magical weapons didn't work, what about dark sorcery? Wei Wuxian unsheathed the sword on Lan Shizui's waist, chopped off a piece of thin bamboo, swiftly making it into a flute. He lifted it up in front of his lips and took a deep breath. The shrill timbre of the flute was like an arrow slicing through the night sky and shooting into the clouds. This should have been a last resort for him, but, however, with the situation already like this, it didn't matter what he summoned. It'd be fine as long as the dark energy was strong enough and the killing intent was keen enough, so that it could rip the soul-consuming goddess into pieces. Lan Shizhui was shocked to the point that he couldn't even move, while Lan Jingyi covered his ears. "Look at what situation we're in! You're still playing the flute? It sounds horrible!" In the battle, 3 or 4 of the cultivators who were fighting with the soul-consuming goddess had lost their souls. Jinling pulled out his sword and was already less than 2 zhang away from the soul-consuming goddess. His heart thumped like crazy, and all of the blood in his body went toward his head. "If I can't slice her head off with this blow, I'll die here. Death it is, then." At the same time, within the forest of Dafan Mountain, a tinkling sound appeared. Tinkle, 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 tinkle. It was sometimes faster, sometimes slower, sometimes pausing, sometimes continuing. It echoed in the silent woods, resembling the sound of iron chains colliding and being dragged on the ground. It came closer and became louder. For some reason, the sound gave the people an uneasy sense of threat. Even the soul-consuming goddess stopped dancing. It raised its arms, blankly staring into the dark of which the sound came from. Wei Wuxian put away his flute and carefully looked into the direction. The ominous feeling that he had felt became stronger and stronger, but because it was willing to come due to the summoning, it would at least be something that listened to him. Then, all of a sudden, the noise stopped. A figure emerged from within the darkness. After having a clear view of the figure and the face, the cultivators' expressions became twisted. Even when facing the goddess statue that could suck away their souls at any minute, the group did not cower or show any fear. But however, their shouting voices right now were filled with terror that they could not conceal. The Ghost General. It's the Ghost General Wen Ning! The title of the Ghost General was as infamous as that of the Yiling Patriarchs. Most of the time the two appeared together. The word only referred one person, the right-hand man of the Yiling Patriarch, Wei Ying, who had helped with the tyrant's crimes, stirred up wind and waves, played the jackal to the tiger, overturned the world with him, and most of all was a fierce corpse who had been turned into ashes a long time ago. Wen Ning. Alright. Why did you need to explain struck while the iron's hot in the English translation? It's an English phrase. Buddy. Wow. Is that total views on my entire channel, or have there been like 225 people to pop in and out? That's a lot. Whack. Alright. Okay. 2 chapters, hopefully, I think, is what I've got left. Yep. Until I get to the spot where I want to stop. So, Wen Ning's head was slightly lowered and his arms hung down, as if he was a marionette waiting for the orders of his master. His face was pale and delicate and could be considered handsome in a melancholy sort of way. However, there were no pupils in his eyes, but only a flat cloud of white, along with a number of black cracking lines which climbed up his face from his neck. And so the melancholy turned into a frightening gloom. The lower hem and sleeves of his robe were ragged and torn, showing a pair of wrists that were the same ashen shade as his face. With black cuffs and chains on both his wrists and ankles, the tinkling sound was produced when he dragged the iron chains on the ground. If he stopped moving, everything would be silent again. It wasn't hard to guess why all of the cultivators were scared out of their wits. Wei Wuxian wasn't any calmer than any of them, either. In fact, the storm on his chest had already crashed over the top of his head. It wasn't that Wen Ning shouldn't be here, but that Wen Ning shouldn't be in this world at all. He should be turned to ashes, even before the siege at Lanjiang Hill. Why? I'm still baffled that they call it that. Anyways. Hearing the others call Wen Ning's name, Jinling's blade, which originally pointed at the direction of the soul-consuming goddess, couldn't help but turn toward the other direction. Seeing that he was distracted, the soul-consuming goddess gladly extended her arm and picked him up. As Wei Wuxian saw her open mouth approaching Jinling, he didn't have time to be surprised. He raised the wooden flute again, hands slightly shaking, and therefore the notes that he played also trembled. Aside from this, the flute was roughly crafted, and so the sound could be described as coarse and unpleasant to the ear. With 2 notes, I'm totally capable of adding sound effects to this and playing awful flute noises. But I don't want to do that to people. It would be too loud compared to everything else. Unless I placed, my computer really far away from me and did it to add some distance in the sound. I'm adding some sound effects places, but I don't know if I should add the flute sound effects or not, Anyways. I'm also not very good at managing my breathing while playing. So I'm not good. Okay. Aside from this, the flute was roughly crafted, so the sound produced could also be described as coarse and unpleasant to the ear. With 2 notes, Wen Ning started to move. Within the blink of an eye, he had already shifted in the front of the soul-consuming goddess. Wen Ning used the side of his palm and gave a blow. The soul-consuming goddess's neck cracked, and although her body didn't move, I know someone. People, you guys are here from TikTok. TK Cosplay, yeah, he has bamboo in his yard, and he made his flute prop from that. I don't know if he bothered to drill holes in it or not, but I'm curious if he's capable of playing that. I wonder. Does it actually, make flute noises, even remotely? Anyways. With 2 notes, Wen Ning started to move. Within the blink of an eye, he had already shifted in front of the soul-consuming goddess. Wen Ning used the side of his palm and gave a blow. The soul-consuming goddess's neck cracked, and although her body didn't move, her head was twisted around because of the force. She faced the direction which her back originally faced, but kept on smiling. Wen Ning gave another blow with his hand, and the soul-consuming goddess's right hand, which was holding Jinling, was cleanly cut off. She bowed her head to look at the wrist, which was broke off sharply. Instead of turning her head toward the correct direction, her entire body turned around so that she was facing Wen Ning with her face and her back. Wei Wuxian didn't dare to relax. He took a deep breath and commanded Wen Ning to fight. However, not long had passed, and he had become even more shocked. Low-level corpses were unable to think on their own, and needed his orders to lead them. Powerful fierce corpses, on the other hand, were usually delirious or unconscious. Yet, Wen Ning's case was different. He was created by Wei Wuxian, which meant that he could easily be called the strongest fierce corpse in the current world. He was the one who was capable of thought. Aside from not fearing injuries, fire, the cold, poison, and whatever living humans feared, he was the same as one. However, at that moment, Wen Ning clearly wasn't conscious. He was both shocked and doubtful as a few cries of alarm came threshing through the crowd. Using both his arms and legs, Wen Ning had secured the soul-consuming goddess on the ground. He picked up a rock which lay on the side, taller than the height of humans, and lifted it above the soul-consuming goddess. He started to slam it into her with great force. Each strike sounded as loud as thunder, continuing until the stone body of the soul-consuming goddess was pounded to pieces. Amid the white pile of rocks scattered on the ground, a marble-sized sphere rolled out, radiating a circle of light in the color of snow. It was the core that condensed the soul-consuming goddess after she devoured the souls of 10 or so living people. If it was brought back and handled carefully, some people who had their souls eaten recently could be restored back to life. However, at the moment, nobody made any effort to pick up the sphere. The blades which were aimed at the soul-consuming goddess all turned around. One cultivator shouted at the top of his lungs, "Close in on him!" Some people replied hesitantly, but more people were indecisive, walking backwards slowly. The cultivator shouted again, "Fellow cultivators, we have to block him so that he doesn't escape. This is Wen Ning we're facing." The words convinced the crowd. What was a mere soul-consuming monster compared to the ghost general? Although the reason as to his appearance was unknown, it was obvious that killing 1,000 soul-consuming spirits couldn't even compare to one single Wen Ning. After all, this was the most obeying mad dog under the Yiling Patriarch, which bit people without making any noise. If it was captured, they would surely become famous in the cultivation world and quickly rise to success. Their original goal from attending Dafan Mountain Night Hunt was to fight for fairies, beasts, and evil spirits to add to their experiences. With the shouts, it was certain that some people were interested, yet the older cultivators who saw with their own eyes how wild Wen Ning was when he broke out were still cautious to make a move. Hence, the person shouted once more, "What are you scared of? It's not as if the Yiling Patriarch is here right now." Well, after another thought, the words made sense to them. What was there to be scared of? His master was already in pieces. With these remarks, the ring of swords which circled around Wen Ning had suddenly decreased in size. Wen Ning waved his arm. The black iron chains swept past heavily, hitting the swords so that the direction of their blades slanted off to the side. Right afterward, he took a stride forward and gripped the neck of the person nearest to him. With a light pull, he was lifted off the ground. Seeing the situation, Wei Wuxian knew that the flute notes were too hurried and abrupt, causing him to develop a killing intent. To stifle it, Wei Wuxian calmed his feelings and assuredly played another melody. The melody had drifted over his mind naturally. It was relaxed and tranquil, contrasting the bizarre and ear-piercing one. Hang on. No. We gotta set up the appropriate music. Hang on a second. We need the proper song playing in the background. What's it called? Right? You know, why am I looking up this version, actually? I'm just gonna go with the original. Yeah, there we go. Wait, is this a man teaching? Oh my god. I'm gonna imitate this man. Like, at a later point in time, I'm going to follow his hand movements of how he plays this. Yeah, I know, I get it. Just play the song, buddy. Just go for it. Okay, this might be a little loud. Hang on. Frick. Okay. Okay. The melody had drifted over his mind naturally. It was relaxed and tranquil, contrasting with the bizarre and ear-piercing one from before. Hearing the sound, Wen Ning froze, and slowly turned toward the direction of which the melody came from. Wei Wuxian stood in the same spot, staring into his pupilless eyes. After a moment, Wen Ning released his hand, throwing the cultivator on the ground. He let down his arms and walked towards Wei Wuxian at a slow pace. His head was lowered, and he dragged a large amount of iron chains, even seeming as if he looked dejected. Wei Wuxian retreated while playing the flute, guiding him to follow. Walking like this for a short distance, they moved into the forest, when suddenly, Wei Wuxian caught the chilly scent of sandalwood. Immediately after, his back bumped into someone. With an abrupt pain on his wrist, the flute melody had stopped. It stopped. Wei Wuxian thought, "Oh no," and turned back around to look. His sight collided with Lan Wangji's eyes. They were light-colored to the point of looking physically cold. Alright, I'll turn the other music back on. I just, I had to have the appropriate music going. Lan Wangji used... wait. The situation looked unpromising. Lan Wangji had seen him use the flute to control corpses with his own eyes. Lan Wangji used one hand to steadily grip Wei Wuxian. Wen Ning stood still at about 2 zhang away, and then, from them, slowly looking around as if he was searching for the flute melody that had suddenly disappeared. From far into the forest, the light of flames and the sound of human voices were spreading. Wei Wuxian thought quickly and made his decision at once. So what if Lan Wangji had seen him do this before? There were tens of thousands of people who knew how to play the flute, and a number of people who imitated the Yiling Patriarch's method of using it to control corpses could form a sect on their own. He wouldn't confess no matter what. He decisively ignored the hand that gripped him and raised his arm to continue playing. This time, the tempo was faster, as if it was urging or scolding. His air was not steady, and each note cracked at the end, sounding shrill and harsh. Suddenly, Lan Wangji's hand tightened and almost causing his wrist to break. Wei Wuxian's fingers loosened from the pain, and the wooden flute dropped to the ground. Fortunately, his orders were clear enough. Wen Ning retreated quickly, disappearing into the dark and gloomy forest without a sound. Wei Wuxian feared that Lan Wangji would chase after Wen Ning, so he backhandedly grabbed him instead. But surprisingly, Lan Wangji never even looked at Wen Ning once, but stared at Wei Wuxian the whole time. The two stood face to face, gripping each other's arms, and stared. At the same time, Jiang Chang arrived. He maintained his patience and waited for the results in Buddha's feet, but before he finished a single cup of tea, a disciple ran from the mountain hastily and told him about how powerful and cruel the thing in Dafan Mountain was. Hearing this, his heart jumped, and he rushed up here again, and he shouted, "Aling!" Jinling almost had his soul taken away a moment ago, but he was fine now, and stood on the ground properly. "Uncle!" Seeing that Jinling was safe, Jiang Chang finally calmed down. Quickly afterward, he scolded angrily. "Didn't you bring signal firelights with you? Don't you know how to use them when you're meeting something like this? What are you pretending to be strong for? Scram over here!" Jinling was also angered from not capturing the soul-consuming goddess. "Weren't you the one who told me that I have to catch it, and if I don't catch it, I shouldn't go see you?" Jiang Chang seriously wanted to slap the rotten brat so hard that he went back inside his mother's stomach. Okay. However, he really did say to himself, and he shouldn't prove himself wrong, he would only turn the cultivators who lay collapsed on the ground, speaking with satire. What on earth could it be beating you up in such a dignified way? Among the cultivators who wore different colored clothing, a bunch were disciples of Yun Meng Zhang sect, ordered by Jiang Chang to secretly assist Jinling in case he couldn't overcome the challenge. He was quite the responsible elder, going to such lengths. One cultivator still hadn't overcome the shock. Sect leader, it's Wen Ning." Jiang Chang thought that he had misheard. "What did you say?" The person replied, "Wen Ning is back!" In an instant, shock, disgust, anger, and disbelief all crossed Jiang Chang's face. After a while passed, he finally spoke bitterly. "The thing was ground to dust in front of everyone so long ago. How can it come back?" The disciple spoke. "It really is Wen Ning. There's no way for it to be wrong. My eyes couldn't have mislooked." He suddenly pointed to the side. "He was the one who summoned him." Wei Wuxian was still in a stalemate with Lan Wangji. Instantly, they were the center of everyone's attention. Jiang Chang's lightning-like gaze also moved to where he stood. After a moment, the corners of Jiang Chang's lips pulled up into a twisted smile. He started to unconsciously stroke the ring again as he spoke softly. "Well, well, so you're back." He let go of his left hand, and a long whip dangled from it. The whip was extremely slender. Like its name, it was a streak of purple lightning which sizzled, as if it had just taken away from a sky of storm clouds. He held one hand of it in his grip, and he was brandishing it as if it seemed like it let out rapid slashes of lightning. Before Wei Wuxian moved again, Lan Wangji had already placed his zither in front of him. With an assured stroke, it was as if a rock had created thousands of waves in the water. The sound of the zither had created countless ripples in the air, colliding with Zidian. The latter waned, and the former waxed. Jiang Chang's considerations of not rashly fighting with him and not displeasing the Lan clan were as if they were being eaten by dogs. The night sky above Dafan Mountain's forest was sometimes surging with purple lightning, and sometimes as bright as daytime. There were sometimes deafening roars and thunder, and sometimes waves of the zither's notes. The rest of the cultivators quickly retreated into a safe distance away from the scene. Standing on the side and watching, they were frightened to death and staring in awe. After all, rarely did one have the chance to watch two famous cultivators from prominent families combat directly, which was why everyone hoped that the fight was more violent and intense. Among these thoughts, there were also some unspeakable hopes for the relationship between the Lan clan and Zhang clan to fall apart, creating an intense scenario. On the other hand, Wei Wuxian waited for his chance and suddenly sprinted off. The crowd was extremely surprised. He hadn't been hit by the whip yet, only because Lan Wangji acted as a barricade in front of him. For him, running away like this was the same as him seeking his own death. Sure enough, as if eyes grew on his back, Zhang Sheng saw that, and he went outside of Lan Wangji's area of protection and was determined to grasp the chance. With a slanting crack of his whip, Zidian slashed out with semblance against a poisonous dragon, precisely landing on the center of his back. Wei Wuxian was almost flung away from the attack of the whip. If not for the donkey blocking him, he would have directly crashed into a tree. However, after the blow, both Lan Wangji and Zhang Chang stopped, looking quite stunned. Wei Wuxian massaged the back of his waist and crawled up with the support of the donkey. He hid behind it and yelled angrily, "How amazing! You really can do anything when you're from a powerful clan, can't you? You can even beat up anyone you want." He was both shocked and enraged. What is going on? One unique power of Zidian was that if it hit someone who seized another's body, their soul and physical form would immediately separate, without any exceptions. The person's soul would be whipped away from the body, yet Wei Wuxian was still moving properly and running about after he was hit. The only explanation was that he did not seize this body. Wei Wuxian thought, of course Zidian couldn't whip out my soul. I didn't seize anyone's body, but was forcibly given one. Being alive against his own will. Bewilderment could be seen on Zhang Cheng's face as he prepared to whip again. When Lan Jingyi suddenly shouted, "Sect Leader Zhang, this should be enough, right? It was Zidian." It was absolutely impossible for the first strike to fail and the second to succeed. For a magical weapon of such high level like Zidian, if nothing was taken out, nothing would be taken out. If it wasn't the seizing of a body, it wouldn't be the seizing of a body. In fact, the shout made Zhang Chang, who cared about maintaining his reputation above anything else, unable to make another move. However, if it wasn't Wei Wuxian, who else could have summoned and controlled Wen Ning? Even after thinking about it multiple times, Zhang Chang still couldn't accept the fact. He pointed at Wei Wuxian and scowled. "Who on earth are you?" Finally, a meddlesome bystander added a word to the conversation. He coughed. "Sect Leader Zhang, you might not have paid attention to these things, so you didn't know about it. Mo Jianyu was the Lanling Jing sect's... he used to be a foreign disciple of the Jin sect, but because his spiritual powers were low and he didn't work hard in his studies, he also had that. He harassed a peer and was thrown out of Lanling Jing's sect. I've also heard that he lost his marbles. In my opinion, he was probably bitter from being unable to cultivate using the correct method and ventured off the wrong path. It might not be the Yiling Patriarch seizing his body." "That? Which?" Zhang Cheng asked. "That, as in that someone helped but couldn't comment." "The cut sleeve pension!" Zhang Cheng's eyebrows twitched, and his eyes, which stared at Wei Wuxian, seemed more disgusted than before. There were comments on the matter, but nobody dared to say them in front of Zhang Chang. Although he was infamous, people had to admit that before the Yiling Patriarch, Wei Wuxian had betrayed the Yunmanjiang sect. He was known for being a handsome young man with a refined cultivator skilled in the 6 arts. He ranked 4th among all of the young masters in cultivation world, being described as lively and cheerful. On the other hand, the ill-tempered sect leader Zhang ranked 5, surpassed by him, so most people weren't as bold to mention the matter. Wei was a frivolous and wanton person who loved to have tangled ties with pretty girls. Nobody knew how many female cultivators he had troubled with his charms, but it was yet unheard that he was also attracted to men, even if he wanted to steal a body and seek revenge. According to Wei Ying's taste, he definitely wouldn't have chosen a lunatic cut sleeve who rode a donkey while eating fruits and painted his face to resemble a hanged ghost. Somebody else muttered, "It's not him, no matter how you look at it. The flute was also played horribly. This is definitely a case of a blind imitation," hearing how inferior it sounded. During the Sunshot campaign, the Yiling Patriarch stood on the battlefield and played his flute throughout the whole night, controlling the ghost soldiers as if they were a living army. He swept away all obstacles, whether a human or god was standing in front of him. He had defeated them. The sound of his flute was as if it was played by an immortal, absolutely incomparable to the terrible moans made by the abandoned son of the Jin clan. No matter how horrible Wei Wuxian's character was, it was too insulting to compare them like this. Wei Wuxian felt somewhat offended. Why don't you try playing a few notes after 10 or so years of not practicing, using a lousy flute made of just a few slices and cuts? If it sounded pleasant, I'll deal in front of you. A moment ago, Zhang Chang was certain that this person was Wei Wuxian, and all the blood in his body started to boil. Yet now, Zidian was clearly telling him that he wasn't. Zidian definitely wouldn't deceive him or make a mistake, so he quickly calmed himself and thought, this doesn't mean anything. I should find an excuse to take him back and use every possible method to get information out of him. It's impossible for him not to confess anything or give himself away. I've done things like this in the past anyways. After thinking it through, he made a gesture. The disciples understood his intentions and came over. Wei Wuxian hurriedly jumped behind Lan Wangji with the donkey and exclaimed, holding a hand over his chest, "Ah, what are you doing to me?" Lan Wangji gave him a look, putting up with his extremely discourteous, noisy, and exaggerated behavior. Seeing that he had no intentions of moving over, Zhang Cheng spoke. "Second young Master Lan, are you purposefully making it difficult for me?" Everyone in the cultivation knew that the young leader of the Zhang clan watched out for Wei Wuxian in an almost crazed manner. He would rather catch the wrong person than let go of any possibility, and took anyone who seemed like they held the soul of Wei Wuxian away to the Yunbei Zhang sect, inflicting severe torture on his victim. If he wanted to take someone back to the opposition, would surely lose half of their life. Lan Shizhui spoke. "Sect leader Zhang, the evidence is clear. Mo Zhanyu's body was not taken. If so, why would you want to trouble an unimportant person such as him?" Zhang Chang replied coldly, "Then why is second young Master Lan going to such great length to protect an unimportant person such as him?" Out of the blue, Wei Wuxian made a few sounds of suppressed laughter. "Sect leader Zhang, I'll feel very troubled if you keep bothering me like this." Zhang Chang's eyebrow twitched again. His instincts told him that this person would definitely not say anything that pleased him. Wei Wuxian spoke. "Thank you for being so enthusiastic. However, your thoughts are quite off. Even if I am attracted to men, I don't like just any type of man, much less follow anyone who waves at me. For example, I'm not interested in ones like you." Wei Wuxian was purposefully trying to disgust him. Zhang Chang had always hated being defeated while compared to others, no matter how pointless the comparison was. If anyone said that he wasn't as good as someone else, he'd be angered, not think about anything else until he won against the person. As expected, Zhang Chang's face darkened. "Oh, really? Then, may I ask, which type you're interested in?" Wei Wuxian replied, "Which type? Well, I'm very much attracted to people like Han Guangjun." Lan Wangji could not tolerate this sort of frivolous and foolish joke. If he felt disgusted, he would definitely draw a line between them and keep his distance. Disgusting two people at once? This was killing two birds with one stone. However, as Lan Wangji heard this, he turned around. His face was emotionless. "Mark your words." Wei Wuxian, Lan Wangji turned back, speaking in a manner yet resolute way. "I will take this person back to the Lan sect." Wei Wuxian, huh? I love it. Cool. Ah, yes, the definition of cut sleeve, which is honestly really cute. Like, why is this a slur? It's cute. It's very sweet. Wait a second. Hello? Hold on. Wait. This music. This is not any random music. This is Wuji. Wuji came on randomly. Hello? Hello? Wow, I don't know how long this has been playing for, but I just noticed that Wuji is in this random assortment of, like, Gushin music. Okay. You know, alright, I guess. Alright. Okay, I don't know if I can recognize the characters for Wuji, but I think it's this one. Oh shit, no it's not. It was the first thing on this. The first thing in this video that came on with Wuji. If there's other CQL background music, I might not recognize it. However, 90% of the background music is just some form of Wuji. So, you know. Okay. The final chapter before I stop. Because then it'll get into the backflash stuff. That flashback. And that is where we will pick up next time. That's a good point to leave off. So, the residence of the Lan sect was located in a remote mountain outside the city of Gusu. Mist constantly enveloped the white walls and black roofs of the buildings, which stretched along the picturesque garden of the waterside pavilion. It was as if an ocean of clouds in the immortal realm. At dawn, the first rays of the morning sun shone through the hazy billows of mist that drifted far and wide, perfectly complementing its name, the cloud recesses. In such a tranquil place, one's heart would be still like water. Only the echoes of the bell tower could be heard vibrating through the air. Although it was incomparable to a holy temple, the Gold Mountain still sent forth a lonesome air of zen. However, the ambiance was suddenly shattered by a long wail, giving a few shudders down the back of the disciples who were training or doing their morning readings. They couldn't help but glance at the direction of the main entrance where the sound came from. Wei Wuxian was crying in front of the entrance, clinging to his donkey. Lan Jingyi spoke. "Stop crying! You said that you liked Han Guangjun yourself, so what are you wailing for now that he has taken you back?" Wei Wuxian pulled a long face. He never had the chance to summon Wen Ning again after the night at Dafan Mountain. Neither did he have any opportunities to find out why Wen Ning was unconscious or why he had appeared in this world again. Before long, he was carried back by Lan Wangji. When he was in his early youth, he had come to study at the Lan sect for 3 months, along with the disciples of other clans, so he had experienced the Gusu Lan sect's dull, boring atmosphere in person. In fact, he still shuddered at the thought of the 3,000 or so sect rules which crammed onto the wall of discipline. As he was tugged up toward the mountain, he passed the rock wall again and saw that 1,000 more were carved in. Now, there were more than 4,000. 4,000! Lan Jingyi spoke. There. Stop making a ruckus. Noise is prohibited in the cloud recesses. He was making loud noises exactly because he didn't want to enter the cloud recesses. If he was dragged inside, it would be extremely difficult for him to come outside again. Back then, when he came to study, all of the disciples were given a jade token of passage. Only with the token would a person be able to enter and leave freely, or else they couldn't pass through the protective barrier of the cloud recesses. After 10 years had passed, the security could only have gotten stricter instead of looser. Lan Wangji stood still in front of the entrance, turning a deaf ear to him, and watched the scene with an indifferent look. When Wei Wuxian's voice had somewhat quieted, he spoke. "Let him cry. When he becomes tired, drag him inside." Wei Wuxian hugged the donkey and cried even harder, bumping his head against it. How misfortunate! He thought that with a whip from Xidian, all of his doubts would be cleared. At the moment, he felt satisfied with himself, and, along with his mouthful of teasing words, he offhandedly gave Lan Wangji a few repulsive comments. Yet who knew that Lan Wangji didn't follow the routine he had followed before? What was this all about? Was it possible that after so many years his level of cultivation had increased, but he had become more intolerant? Wei Wuxian spoke. I'm attracted to men, so with so many beautiful young men in your sect, I'm afraid that I won't be able to control myself. Lan Shizhui tried to reason with him. Young Master Mo, it was for your sake that Han Guangju brought you here. If you do not follow us, Sect Leader Zhang will not be willing to let the matter go. During these years, there were countless people whom he caught and took back to Lotus Pier, and none of those people were ever let out. Lan Jingyi spoke. That's right. You have seen Sect Leader Zhang's methods, have you not? They are quite cruel. He paused there, remembering the rule that stated talking behind people's backs was prohibited, and secretly glanced at Lan Wangji. Seeing that Hong Wangjuns did not seem any means to chastise him, he was bold enough as to mumble on. It's because of the unhealthy trend that the Yiling Patriarch started. There are so many people who copy him and cultivated foolish methods. With sect leader Zhang being so suspicious of everyone, is it even possible for him to catch them all? You just look at you with your flute skills. The told more words than any sentences could describe. Wei Wuxian felt like he really needed to defend himself. Well, actually, you might not believe me, but I actually play the flute quite well. Before he finished his defense, a few white-clothed cultivators walked through the door. Each person wore lawn sect uniform, with flowing plain robes as white as snow. The man standing in front was tall and slender. Hanging on his waist was a zhao made of white jade. Aside from his sword, as Lan Wangji saw them, he slightly bowed his head to show respect, as the person did the same. He looked at Wei Wuxian and smiled. Wangji never brings guests home. This is? As the person stood in front of Lan Wangji, it was as if they were mirror images. However, the color of Lan Wangji's eyes was extremely light, as if they were tinted crystals, while his eyes were of a gentler, darker shade. This was Lan Huan, the leader of the Gusu Lan sect, Zewu Jun, Lan Zichen. Each place brought up the same kind of people. The Gusu Lan sect had always been known for nurturing a lot of handsome men, especially the two Jades of the clan's current generation. Even though the two were not twins, they looked extremely similar to each other, which made it difficult to tell who was the superior one. Yet, although their appearances were similar, their personalities were not. Lan Zichen was gentler and benevolent, while Lan Wangji was aloof and overly stern, keeping everyone at an arm's length and being the opposite of amicable. Amiable? Amiable. There was a spot on my monitor. Anyways, this was why in the list of the best-looking young masters in the cultivation world, the former ranked first and the latter ranked second. Lan Zichen proved himself worthy of being the leader of a sect. Even as he saw Wei Wuxian embracing a donkey, he did not appear to be affected at all. Wei Wuxian let go of the donkey with a beaming smile on his face and approached him. The Gusu Lan sect placed a lot of regard on the order of seniority. If he talked nonsense to Lan Zichen, he would most definitely be chased off of the cloud recesses. However, when he just got ready to show his capabilities, Lan Wangji looked at him immediately. His lips were sealed closed. Lan Wangji turned around and continued his polite conversation with Lan Zichen. Brother, are you going to visit Lan Fangzun again? Yan Fangzun. That's his proper name? Interesting. Anyways, Lan Zichen nodded. To negotiate about the next discussion conference at Jinling Tower. Wei Wuxian was unable to open his mouth, so he sourly walked back to the donkey. Lan Fangzun was the current leader of the Lanlang Jin sect, Jin Guangyao, the only illegitimate son whom Jin Guangshan approved of. He was Jinling's youngest uncle, being... No. That's not true. That is not correct. With both Jinling's father, Jin Zixuan and Mo Zhanyu, however, although they were both illegitimate sons, they were extremely different. While Mo Zhanyu was in Moat Village, sleeping on the ground and eating leftovers, Jin Guangyao was sitting in the highest seat of the cultivation world, summoning the winds and controlling the rain. Yeah, there's reasons for that. If he wanted to talk to Lan Zichen or initiate a discussion conference, he could do so however he wanted to. Then again, no wonder the sect leaders of Lan and Jin sects personally went along quite well. After all, they were sworn brothers. Lan Zichen spoke. Uncle has taken and examined what you brought back from Mo Village. Hearing the words Mo Village, Wei Wuxian automatically started to pay attention. Unexpectedly, he felt his lips part. Lan Zichen had released his silence and spoke to Lan Wangji. It's not often that you bring someone home. Being in such good spirits, you need to treat your guests with courtesy, unlike this. Good spirits? Wei Wuxian looked carefully at Lan Wangji's face. How could he tell that he was in good spirits? Oh, honey, you're gonna learn that. After watching Lan Zichen leave, Lan Wangji spoke. Drag him inside. Then Wei Wuxian was indeed dragged into a place which he swore not to step inside again. In the past, only distinguished cultivators had come to the Lan sect. Never had he seen a guest like him before. The juniors all crowded around him, interested by this new turn of events. If not for the sect rules being so strict, there would definitely be bouts of laughter along the journey. Lan Jingyi asked, Hong Guangjun, where should we drag him to? Lan Wangji replied, "The Jingxi." "The Jingxi?" Wei Wuxian did not know what was going on. The rest of them stared among themselves, unafraid to make any sound. It was Han Guangzhu's bedroom and study, which he had never invited anyone inside. The furniture of the Jingxi was extremely simplistic, without any unnecessary belongings on the accordion partition. There was a painting of drifting clouds, floating and morphing with its fine brushwork. A guqin table lay horizontally in front of it. On top of the three-legged incense stand in the corner, a hollowed-out incense burner made of white jade emitted a soft, lingering smoke, filling the whole room with chilling scent of sandalwood. Lan Wangji went to see his uncle to discuss serious matters. While Wei Wuxian was pushed into the room right after Lan Wangji left, Wei Wuxian also went outside. He strolled around the cloud recesses and found out that he had expected, without the jade token for passage, he had climbed up the white walls of a few zhang's height. He would be immediately flung off by the barrier, attracting the attentions of nearby patrolmen at once. Wei Wuxian could only go back to the Jingxi. He never really worried about anything, no matter what he came across. He walked around the Jingxi with his arms behind his back, firmly believing that sooner or later there would be a solution. The refreshing scent of sandalwood was cold and clear. Although it wasn't sentimental, he had his own way of tugging one's heartstrings. It had its own... okay. With nothing to do, he started to think random thoughts. Lan Zhan happened to smell like this scent. His clothes were probably tinged with the fragrance when he was practicing his guqin or meditating here. After these thoughts, he couldn't help but to shift closer to the incense stand in the corner. With this shift, he became aware that beneath his foot, one piece of wood was significantly different from the other pieces. He bent down and started to knock here and there due to curiosity. In his past life, he did a lot of digging pits, excavating graves, finding holes in the ground. After a few moments, he turned up a piece of a board. Finding a secretive space in Lan Wangji's room was already more than enough to surprise Wei Wuxian. However, after he saw what was inside, he was even more surprised. After flipping the wooden board open, a mellow aroma had filled the air, unnoticeable when it was mixed with the sandalwood scent. 7 or 8 black jars were packed into a small square cellar. Sure enough, Lan Wangji had changed. He even started to store liquor. The cloud recesses prohibited liquor. Because of this, the first time they met had been a small fight. Lan Wangji ended up spilling a jar of the Emperor's Smile which he brought from the city of Gusu. After he returned to Gusu from Yunbang, Wei Wuxian never even had the chance to drink the Emperor's Smile, made exclusively by Gusu's experts, ever again. He had thought about this for his entire life, always telling himself to come back and taste it, even if he never received the opportunity. But the opportunity never came. Hidden in here was none other than the liquor. He didn't even need to open and taste it, and knew that it was Emperor's Smile just by the smell of it. He would never have thought that he would find a liquor hiding in the vault of the room. A person as scrumptious and abstinent as Lan Wangji is. Karma really outdid itself with this reincarnation. Okay, good night. Where was I? As Wei Wuxian exclaimed upon the matter, he finished 1 jar already. He had a high tolerance for alcohol and loved to drink. After he came to the conclusion that Lan Wangji still owed him a jar of Emperor's Smile, and it was time to collect his interests, he drank another jar. When he was just starting to get a little tipsy, a thought suddenly passed his mind. How hard was it to get the jade token in the cloud recesses? There was a cold spring with a lot of miraculous effects for the male cultivators to use. It was into the cold spring he was bound to take off his clothing. Then, with his clothing already off, there would be nowhere to put it aside from holding it in his mouth, which was definitely out of the question. Wei Wuxian clapped his hands and finished the last gulp of the jar. After searching, he found there were no places to throw it away, so he filled the empty jars with clear water and sealed the lids again, stuffing them back inside and closing the wooden board. With this done, he ventured out to find the jade token. Although the cloud recesses had been burnt down before the Sunshot campaign happened, the rebuilt structure of the area was the same. Wei Wuxian walked through the winding paths from memory and soon found this cold spring, situated at a quiet and obscure place. The disciple on duty for watching over the cold spring was quite a distance away. The female cultivators were in another quarter of the cloud recesses and didn't come here to use it. Nobody in the Lan sect did an impudent thing such as coming to the cold spring to watch others bathe. Anyway, therefore, the security wasn't strict at all, and it was extremely easy to overcome, making it easy for Wei Wuxian to go and shame himself. And, coincidentally, there was a set of white clothes on top of the white rocks behind the crisscrossed eupatorium grasses, meaning that someone had already come. The set of white clothes was folded extremely neatly, almost making one's hair rise. It looked like a snow-white piece of tofu. Even the forehead ribbon was folded without any creases. As Wei Wuxian put his hand in and searched for the jade token of passage, he was almost reluctant to mess it up. Afterward, stepping over the bushes and the eupatorium of grasses, his gaze passed over the spring and suddenly halted. The water in the cold spring was freezing. Unlike a hot spring, there wasn't any vapor to shroud one's eyes, so it was possible to take a clear look at the upper half of a person in the spring who stood with his back to him. The person in the spring was quite tall. His skin was fair and his hair was black, wet and gathered to one side. The lines which outlined his waist were smooth, gracefully holding strength in simpler terms. He was a beauty. However, Wei Wuxian was definitely not stunned, and unable to avert his gaze because he was looking at bathing beauty. No matter how beautiful he was, he wouldn't actually... Why is he trying to explain this away so hard? He wouldn't actually be attracted to men. Really, it was the things on the person's back that made him unable to avert his gaze. There were dozens of intersecting scars. They were the scars of a discipline whip. In this different sects, there's a type of discipline whip to punish disciples of a sect that made significant mistakes. After the torture, the scars would never disappear. Although Wei Wuxian had never been hit by a discipline whip before, Zhang Chang had been. Even after desperately trying, he couldn't make the disgracing imprint fade one bit. This was why Wei Wuxian would never misremember scars like this. Usually, with only 1 or 2 strikes from the discipline whip, it would already be enough of a punishment for the bearer to remember it their whole life, never to make the same mistake again. The amount of scars on this person's back accumulated to 30 at least. Just what sort of monstrous crime did he commit to be whipped so many times? If it really was a monstrous crime, why didn't they kill him? At the moment, the person in the spring turned around. Beneath his collarbone and near his heart there was also a clear sear. Seeing the sear, Wei Wuxian's shock instantly reached its highest peak. I guess there's one more chapter before we reach... But there's not much that's going to happen here. Or is this... Maybe it cuts halfway through the chapter, but that would be weird. Depends. Nope, this chapter is marked for only being 4 minutes to read. So... Wait. No, this isn't a chapter. This is a freaking summary of characters. I don't need that. Get out of here. Okay. Okay, there we go. This year took away all of Wei Wuxian's attention, making him doubt that he had mislooked. He couldn't even pay attention to the person's face, and his breaths also started for a few times. Suddenly, a flash of white appeared before his eyes, as if the snow had fallen before him. Quickly afterward, the blue glare of sword penetrated through the snow, slashing toward him with an arctic blast of wind. Who didn't know that it was Han Guangzhu's famous sword Bishan? Crap, it's Lan Wangji! Wei Wuxian was quite adept at running away and dodging swords. With a roll on the ground, he quickly avoided the sword. He even had the time to pull off a leaf that stuck to his hair when he quickly rushed out of the cold spring. He ran like a headless fly right into a few people who were passing by from night watching. They grabbed him and scolded. "What are you running around for? Running's prohibited in the cloud recesses." Wei Wuxian, seeing that it was Lan Jingyi and the others, were ecstatic. Thinking that he could finally be chased down the mountain, he presented himself at once. I didn't see anything. I'm definitely not here to peep at Han Guangjun bathing." The juniors were shocked speechless by his impudence. No matter where he was, Han Guangjun was a high, holy mountain to behold in awe, especially respected among the junior disciples in the sect. He was near the cold spring to watch Han Guangjun bathe. Just thinking about such a thing would be the greatest crime to ever be forgiven. Lan Shizhui was frightened to the point that his voice even changed. What? Han Guangjun? Han Guangjun is inside? Hang on, what is the time on this chapter, actually? 11 minutes, okay. Okay. Lan Jingyi seized him furiously. You damn cut sleeve! Is he someone you should peek at? Wei Wuxian struck the iron while it was hot and confirmed his conviction. I didn't see a single peek of how Han Guangjun looks without his clothes. Lan Zhangyi fumed. Are you saying that 300 tails are not buried here? Well, if you did not, why are you sneaking around here? Look at you, you have no face to see anyone. Wei Wuxian covered his face with his hand. Don't be so loud. No, noise is prohibited in the cloud recesses. Amid the ruckus, Lan Wangji walked out from behind the layers of eupatorium grasses with his hair down, wearing a white robe. The conversation hadn't even finished yet, and yet he was already dressed in an orderly fashion, Bishan still unsheathed. The juniors had hurried to greet him. Lan Zhengyi rushed to speak. Han Guangjun, Mojan Yu really is awful. You brought him back, seeing that he assisted at Mo village, yet he... Wei Wuxian thought that this time it would be beyond his endurance and kicked out of the sect. However, Lan Wangji only lightly glimpsed at him. After a moment of silence, he sheathed Bishan and with a shing spoke. You are dismissed. It was only 3 toneless words, but was powerful enough for no second option to be allowed. The crowd dispersed immediately while Lan Wangji calmly held Wei Wuxian back by his collar and dragged him toward the Jingxi. In his past life, the two were of similar height, both somewhat slender and tall. Wei Wuxian was only shorter than Lan Wangji by a tiny bit. When they stood together, the difference was less than 1 kun between them, were almost unnoticeable. However, after waking up in another's body, he was more than 2 kun shorter than Lan Wangji. While being held in his hand, he couldn't even struggle against him. Wei Wuxian staggered, wanted to shout, but Lan Wangji spoke coldly. Those who make noise will be silenced. He would love to be thrown off the mountain, but wouldn't want to be silenced. Wei Wuxian couldn't understand it all. Since when did Lan sect tolerate something as shameless as peeking at one of the Lan's most distinguished cultivators bathing? Lan Wangji carried him to the Jingxi and walked straight toward the inner room and threw himself onto the bed with a thump. Wei Wuxian yelped from the pain. He couldn't get up at the moment, wriggling upright after a while. He originally wanted to whine a few times in a flirtatious manner so that he would detest him. However, as he raised his head, he saw that Lan Wangji was holding Bishan with one hand, looking down at him commandingly. He was used to seeing Lan Wangji with his forehead ribbon, neat, long hair, scrumptious to every detail, but had never seen him like this. With his hair a bit loose and wearing thin clothing, Wei Wuxian couldn't help to glance a few more times. After the effort of carrying and throwing him onto the bed, Lan Wangji's collars, which were closed in the beginning, came slightly apart, showing his distinct collarbones and the deep red sear under them. As he saw the sear, Wei Wuxian's attention was captured again. When he hadn't become the Yiling Patriarch yet, he also had a sear like this on his body, and the sear on Lan Wangji's body was the same as the one on his body in his past life, no matter the position or the shape, so it was only natural for him to recognize it and be surprised. Speaking of it, aside from the sear, the 30 or so scars of the discipline whip on his back were also surprising. Lan Wangji became famous at a young age. With his high appraisal, he was one of the most acknowledged cultivators in the cultivation world, and also part of the 2 Jades, which the Gusulan sect was so proud of. Every word and action of his was set as examples of excellence by the elders, in each sect for their disciples. Just what unforgivable mistake did he make for him to be punished like this? Seeing from the 30 or so scars of the discipline whip, the executor might as well have killed him. As soon as the discipline whip had been delivered, it wouldn't have disappeared for the rest of the bearer's life, so that they would remember it forever, and never make the same mistakes again. Following his gaze, Lan Wangji lowered his eyes. He pulled his collar so that it covered his collarbones and sear, becoming the indifferent Han Guangjun once again. At the moment, the deep toil of the bell came from far away. The Lan sect had strict rules, including a precise scheduling of sleeping at 9, and in the evening and rising at 5 in the morning. The bell was a reminder for that. Lan Wangji listened attentively to the tolls and spoke to Wei Wuxian. You will be sleeping here. Without giving Wei Wuxian a chance to reply, he turned to the other compartment of the Jingxi, leaving Wei Wuxian alone, sprawled on the bed alone and feeling confused. He did doubt that Lan Wangji might have guessed who he was. However, the doubt was lacking in both sense and reason. As sacrificing one's body was a prohibited practice, there were probably not a lot of people who knew about it. The scrolls passed down through generations were most likely partial pieces of the entire work, unable to reach their full potential. Things continued like this, and